Is it just Dan?
Oh, hey. Let's see, buddy.
So I think last year we got the right, like, that we put what we do is we do like group stuff. I think Jody's no, I think it's just a get started. I'll see if I have some. I think they've got, yeah, two presentations for starters.
Okay.
We're gonna get you.
Who's presenting today? Is it you and Lauren and the chief?
Lauren and the chief.
Didn't you do it last year?
Yeah, whenever you
I thought so.
Yeah. No rush.
It's in the business
I
plan,
think,
right?
okay.
You don't
The other
remember?
files you
Yeah.
can find?
I think so. I think so.
If you need to re-PDF the
Lauren's got
presentation,
it.
we can, just really,
Oh, yeah.
we'll find.
Might have been Karen, actually.
We'll change it
It
whenever
might
it's
have
ready.
been Karen.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Hi.
It was.
How are you? You okay?
If everybody will grab their seats, so we're at the appointed hour. Welcome, everyone, to our Appeal Police Services Board meeting of Friday, November 1st. We're already November 1st, my goodness. Welcome all. Let me begin with our Indigenous land acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather and which the Region of Peel operates as part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. For thousands of years, Indigenous peoples inhabited and cared for this land and continue to do so today. In particular, we acknowledge the territory of the Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Chippewa peoples, Ojibwe-Chippewa peoples, and the land that is home to the Métis, and most recently the territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, who are direct descendants of the Mississaugas of the Credit. We are grateful to have this opportunity to work on this land, and by doing so, give our respects to its first inhabitants. Next up, I have roll call. All members are present. Do I have any declarations of conflict of interest from any of my colleagues? Seeing none, Chief, over to you for your Chief's update.
Good morning, Chair and Board. We don't have very many, but I'm going to just hand it over to I think Nick and Mark for a couple of quick updates.
Excellent. Thank you, Chief, and through the Chair. My pleasure to provide an update on two investigations that our police service has been involved in. The most recent Project Sledgehammer. Project Sledgehammer was an investigation into firearms, possession of illegal firearms, and that's an issue which, as you know, is incredibly important for our community. We successfully resolved that investigation, recovered 11 firearms in addition to a number of devices that would convert handguns to fully automatic. So again, an opportunity to say thank you to all the investigative team responsible for that, and of course appreciate the support of the board. The additional update that I would like to provide is into a joint forces operation that we've been working with our partners from the Ontario Provincial Police, and that's Project Midnight. You will recall last year we saw a streak of violence that saw a family in Caledon where tragically 2 people were shot and killed, and a young girl was shot multiple times. We had a man here in Peel who was also shot in his driveway, and a number of other shootings that we believe are connected to this streak of violence. It's my pleasure to let you know, I believe the board would already be aware, but for the community, on October 17th, we traveled to Los Angeles, where we presented alongside our partners from the US and specifically the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the results of one of their projects, which was directly connected to ours, and saw indictments against the people responsible for the homicide in Peel, as well as the homicides that had occurred in Caledon. That individual was connected to the Sinaloan cartel from Mexico and was responsible for tens of thousands of kilograms of drugs entering Canada, and more specifically destined for the Greater Toronto area. So again, my thanks to the investigative team, some of which are going to be presenting here today, but both of those things for me are a demonstration of the expertise and capacity of our police service, but also the commitment of the people that we have serving our community and their willingness to go wherever they need to go in order to help make sure that the people that target our community are held accountable for their actions.
Thank you, Chief, through the Chair. I'd just like to update the board on Project Tallahassee, which is a project, an auto theft project that was run out of our airport CIB. Earlier this year, the airport CIB team identified a group that was targeting parking lots in and around Pearson Airport. And between May 1st and September 1st of this year, we identified or linked 77 car thefts to this group. We were able to, working with Toronto Police Service, Hamilton Regional Police Service, and some of our other sector partners were able to recover 50% of the vehicles, all of them in containers in Montreal, and arrest 9 people and lay 135 charges. The other 50% of the vehicles, we believe, have been shipped abroad. I think this highlights for us the trans-jurisdictional nature of crime, but it also outlays for us that while we're recovering costs, some hard costs from the airport, there are soft costs that come with that having that monster in our jurisdiction, with 50 million people traveling through there on a yearly basis. And again, the things that when we build a community that people want to come to, we have to understand that there are people that want to come and prey on that community as well.
Thank you all. Thank you for those updates. I now go to my board members for any questions or announcements at this time. I see Vice Chair Coley.
I just wanted to take the time to wish everyone a very happy Diwali and Bandi Chor Divas, because it is going on for 2 days, or as it does in Canada. I'm proud to say it'll continue for this entire month, everywhere we go. But I just wanted to wish a very happy Diwali and a Bandi Chor Divas to the Punjabi community as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carby.
Thank you, Chair. I know we have a number of occasions talked about our visits to the communication center. I had the opportunity of going back a year after my first visit, and just wanted to highlight some significant improvements and the impact on the morale, if you will, of staff there. We have highlighted the impact of NG 911 and the efficiencies that it has brought to reducing call times. What I think is also noteworthy is the impact of that has had on staff, so that they're not constantly looking up on, all of this red of calls that they can't manage because they were so overwhelmed. And I want to thank Inspector Mark Noble and Deputy Chief, I'm promoting him, Staff Superintendent Dirk Niles, who managed my tour of the comm center. The area that also was very impactful was the work that is being done with our CSOC. And one of the things that I think stood out, and maybe I'd love a little bit more on this for the benefit of the public, of course, is the area of the vulnerable individual registry that has allowed us, when someone who is in that registry was to go missing, the ability to find and bring home those individuals safely has dropped significantly, because we can track a pattern of where they would go when they would, leave home. And that to me is a significant public safety improvement for those individuals. So I just wonder if there are ways that we can enhance that registry or improve, add more individuals to it. Of course, that requires volunteering individuals to participate in that. But I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about that and how we can engage the public in participating in that registry for the benefit of public safety.
Mr. Carby, if I could, I want to talk, because I think you've asked 2 questions there, and I want to speak to one a little bit more. I know Mayor Brown was touching upon this as well, but you mentioned the advances in 911, and like all of you, I watch a lot of media, and it was intriguing listening to our friends next door in Toronto about espousing all the great advances they've had in 911 and what they're doing, et cetera. And I've had the privilege of being around a long time, and I use this line regularly because I'm so proud of the council that I worked on in Mississauga and the region of Peel. And I hear a lot of stories like that about advances and whatnot. And I often end up saying to myself, oh yeah, I know all about that. You know what we call that here in Mississauga back in the day? We call that March 14th, 2011, because that's when we did that. But we don't have much media and nobody ever covers it. This week, in fact, just this last day or two, God bless Toronto for their advances in 911. And I think I call that February 12, 2022 at the Region of Peel Police Services Board and the great work that we've done. So if I could, thank you for bringing it up and for Mayor Brown for being so diligent and acknowledging it before. the advances in 911, and I think we should speak to that because it got some fanfare out of Toronto. And Chief, you know the conversation the board regularly has with the team. We keep investing in this technology dividend. Tell us when it's paying off, and it's paid off in a big way. So that is the first part of your question that I think we should have framed in that way. And then I want to get back to the vulnerable registry. So Chief, first to you, give us some words on that and the great advances that we were out of the hopper first on with regards to 911.
Sure. So can I just do the whole hearts and minds thing for a second? All 3,500 of us here at Peel are solely committed to the citizens of this region. You've got our heart and soul. They work tirelessly day and night, civilian and sworn. You can ask President Woolley. We just are fully committed to this region. So, but we do believe that, you know, as proud as we are of the work we do here, that, you know, the rising tide floats all boats. So, and this is not me being competitive with our other peers. We're a lockstep with all the other chiefs and other organizations, but we do take a leadership role on these. When we see a pressure here, our job is to advocate federally, provincially, across all municipalities. And so, Mr. Carby, for one thing, you've got a lucky day today. We've got Project Lantern, the presentation on how we use the Vulnerable Persons Registry, and we've got some amazing community partners because we do believe it's not about us, and we want to thank them for their time and energy to be here today. But Anthony can take it to the bank in 2 seconds or less than that.
Please.
And he's going to, because of our role at the province and my past role as the president of the OACP, like Anthony's leading nationally to help other police agencies find their way through things like NG 911 and reducing, you know, wait times. And can I first of all thank you last year for your commitment to support us to invest in the infrastructure that has dropped wait times. Like, we still have other pressures, but yes, and others are following suit. So did I say everything you were going to say, Ann?
Any other questions? Just very briefly, when we buy and invest in technology here, we don't buy it or invest in it because it's new and it's nice. It's about impact on the communities. And 3 years ago, when we had the foresight to buy the NG 911 technology, it was because people were on hold for way too long when they called 911. And we changed systems, which I do want to give credit to our women and men in communications. It was not an easy change in system. In fact, I'll just be honest, they didn't like it. But it was to lead to change to implement next generation technology 3 years in advance of when the federal mandate is supposed to be, so we can answer calls now in 10 to 12 seconds versus our neighbors next door who, unfortunately for them, and again, they have great women and men, and I just read an article, there are still around 12 minutes. So it's very, very important that not only do we just buy technology, but we invest in it properly and where it benefits the community the most. And that was the investment for next generation.
Very good. Len, on the second one, we're going to get a full presentation on that. So questions pending and great news on the vulnerable registry. So more to come on that at that time. I carry on with my list of announcements and questions from colleagues. Mayor Parrish.
Well, this isn't really an announcement. It's a thank you to the chief and his senior staff. They were tortured on Wednesday, first by the Brampton Council and then by the Mississauga Council in the afternoon, and the stamina that they exhibited was something else. We were able to talk extensively about all the challenges that are facing the police forces this year, particularly, and last year, and probably in the future. And also, I want to thank Rob Serpay, who did a great job of explaining to councillors how they have no power on the budget, and they accepted it without too much snarling. So it was well explained. The budget is obviously coming forward at the region, but we got enough hints yesterday or Wednesday that we know it's going to be big this year, and we know why it's going to be big. So I just want to thank you for putting in the time. I know going through one of those sessions must be tough, but having to repeat yourself in the afternoon must have been really tough. And I thank you very much for doing it.
Thank you. And Mr. Boughton, did I see you on my list as well? Did you have something? No, later. Okay, very good. Well, perhaps if I could just top up with a couple, just to mean the things that folks don't see, but the annual conference for policing in Canada was in Halifax, and we had the privilege, we being the Police Services Board and the chief and Rob Serpe, we were asked to do a presentation, and you know, you're always mindful of, in our line of work, it's a dangerous thing, and apologies for the analogy, but the emperor has no clothes syndrome. So you keep drinking your own Kool-Aid and thinking everything's great until somebody says it really isn't. And, you know, I tend to think, and I think our team thinks things are pretty good here and we do a very good job, but you don't know what to compare it to, et cetera. But I've got to tell you, I don't know that in 36 years I've ever been prouder than to be amongst our 500 peers there. And the number that reached out after our presentation to tell us, no, you really are as good as you think you are and as probably we know you are. You're just so progressive in Peel and what you're doing and the things you're at the vanguard on from the chief, the team that he's put in place. And it's very comforting to hear that because I'd like to think it's true, but it's nice when your peers sort of acknowledge it. And I don't know that I've ever been prouder. And that speaks to a lot of hard work on behalf of 3,500 people, as the chief pointed out that day as well. So I wanted to make that point. Second point I wanted to make is, you know, all the great initiatives, we're talking about Project Chrome, Project 24 Carat. I want to let some friends in Mississauga know that I wanted to apologize to them publicly because Mississauga a couple of weeks ago had an event where they acknowledged the 50th anniversary and all the old members of council were invited, as was I. And it was remarked that I was distinguished for my absence because I think I was the only person who didn't show up. But Madam Mayor, with apologies to you, and you reached out personally as well. On that evening, we were acknowledging some of the friends from the service with regards to Project Chrome. And I remind you that that amazing, Project, yes, Project 24 Carat. And between them, one of them was a group of our officers who do their work undercover. And so we wanted to acknowledge them and thank them, but things like that are done very quietly. At the press conference, I acknowledged them quietly, and then I wanted to follow up and thank them. And with regards to Project Chrome, when we did this, it was sort of out of town and very quiet, and given I'm the only one that had met some of them, I thought I'd be the one who would go and meet with some of them again. Chief, you know, we had an event also that night with regards to our friend at Runnymede and the PTSD function, and the chief and I had to compare notes and said, one of us has to go to one and one of us has to go to the other. I was honored to be with our members of the service that evening, with apologies to my friends in Mississauga, but that's why I couldn't make both events. But both went very, very well. I'm grateful, but I wish I could have split myself in two, but happy to be with the folks on the service that did such great work there. Okay, with that, if I have no other speakers or comments, that takes us to the heart of the agenda. First item up, minutes of the board meeting held Friday, September 24. They're here to be adopted as moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Vice Chair Coley. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, that is approved. Deputations, we have none. Presentation. First presentation up, 3.1, homicide and missing person presentation. Inspector T. Cousins to provide homicide and missing person presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, I wouldn't mind a few moments to provide a bit of an introduction. Of course, we have Inspector Todd Custance and Detective Sergeant Mike Mavity. And they're going to provide an overview of not only their area of oversight, but some of the response to really what are the most serious crimes that a police officer can respond to and can investigate. And once again, I'll take the opportunity to thank not only them, but the women and men who make up their team, who 24/7, every day of the year, are responding to some of the most egregious and terrible crimes that you could imagine a police officer having to deal with. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to them.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you both. Good morning. My name is Todd Custance. I brought with me today Detective Sergeant Mike Mavity. We're both members of the Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau. I appreciate the time today to provide an overview and a brief, and to brief you on our Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau. I'll attempt to highlight ongoing challenges and key achievements. Today, we'll quickly look at team composition, outline our team structure, including key roles and any specialized skills. We'll go over our response protocols, summary of established response procedures for incidents, including communication and coordination with provincial partners, And evidence collection. I'll outline methods for gathering evidence, including CCTV collection, canvassing, and finding eyewitnesses. We'll go over the associated costs, high-level overview of costs incurred, focusing on personnel expenses. And our direction and strategic goals. I'll briefly outline upcoming priorities, strategic objectives, and including planned initiatives and improvements. To date, we've had 17 homicides in Mississauga and Brampton in 2024. A majority, 64%, are firearm related. Up from last year, which was 43%. We've seen a marked decrease this year in incidents of intimate partner violence, with only one incident. We'd love for that number to be 0, but we've had one incident, and we have seen an uptick in family violence, seeing 4 incidents of family domestic violence.
And Chair, if I may, and you're okay with it, I may wade in and out of the presentation just to highlight some things for the benefit of the board. As you see there, in 2024, we've had 1 incident of homicide attributable to intimate partner violence. I think it's important to highlight that prior to some of the changes to the way our service responds to intimate partner violence, that being 2019, we started our IPV unit. Mid-2020 was the first time we piloted it. But in 2019, we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, 6 homicides that were the result of intimate partner violence. So 1 is too many, absolutely, but we are making a difference in that space, which is a big piece of where we're investing our resources and having to spend our time.
Thanks, Deputy. The Homicide and Missing Person Bureau have laid charges and established culpability in all but 3 investigations to date in 2024. The 3 unsolved homicides to date include 2 that occurred this year in October, and 1 that resulted from a shooting in 2021 where the victim died this year. We continue to investigate cases that occurred in 2023 and some cases that go beyond 2023. Just the last 5 years, we've seen an average of 23 homicides per year in the region of Peel. Other notable years being 2022, where we saw 30 homicides. 18 of those homicides were firearm related. Again, a high number, with 60% of them being gun related. In 2019, we saw the most in our history, with 31 homicides, and 13 of those were the results of shots fired.
And I would maybe just jump in there again. Obviously, we're seeing a trend of firearm-related homicides. I think it's important to point out that the majority of our homicides that are committed with a firearm, if we do recover that firearm, more often than not, it's an illegally possessed firearm that's been smuggled in from the U.S. And the reason why I point that out, and the intimate partner violence-related homicides, is this tells us where we need to begin investing some of our resources and doing more in spaces so that we can prevent the most tragic outcomes. We've done a lot in firearms. We're doing a lot in intimate partner violence. And the reason why we're doing that is because we want to prevent these types of outcomes.
This next slide outlines the human resources involved in homicide response. This is strictly an overview of my area of responsibility, and it doesn't include forensic investigative services, community policing operations, or emergency services that attend typically the original call first. We employ 3 full-time teams of 7 officers each. When a homicide happens, the on-call team responds immediately to the call, 24/7, and are expected to respond immediately. Having once upon a time been an Operational Homicide Bureau member, I can tell you that homicide families are a special breed. The demands on my investigators between overtime requirements and on-call duties are nothing short of extraordinary. Roles are assigned based on major case management framework. All roles are assigned by officers' skills and abilities. Our initial response relies significantly on video canvassing, which is essential to gathering crucial evidence. The major case management framework comes from the late 80s, early 90s, when the Justice Archie Campbell inquiry occurred into the murders of Leslie Mahaffey, and Kristen French, and the subsequent arrest of Paul Bernardo. This structure ensures roles are established and fulfilled, and communication is made between jurisdictions when offenses occur outside of our own jurisdictions. We also utilize PowerCase, a provincially mandated software designed for deconfliction and linkage. This program ensures effective communication across jurisdictions. Each of our teams includes an officer specifically trained in the use of PowerCase and inputting information into that software package. This facilitates cross-jurisdictional real-time data sharing. We also have 4 civilian support staff, being disclosure, PowerCase, coordinator, and criminal intelligence analysis. I'll quickly touch on disclosure demands. Regina versus Jordan in 2016, a constitutional law under the Charter of Rights addresses the accused's right to be tried within a reasonable time and has established immutable timelines for our cases tried at the Superior Court level. These cases must be tried within 30 months, which makes disclosure of all relevant evidence. I say this not to suggest it's a problem, but just a factor in resource management. Additionally, 26 investigators from various departments within Peel are transferred into the Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau for a year-long mentorship program. This program provides experience to developing investigators and insight into major crime environments. It also meets our needs to sustain our succession plan. Certainly there's more to a homicide investigation than just the canvas, but this is one of our tools in our arsenal. The canvassing process has evolved significantly over the past several years. A decade ago, the primary focus was on identifying eyewitnesses within a specific geographic area. Today, we prioritize finding eyewitnesses. We also have the critical task of gathering video evidence, both before and after incidents, which can provide crucial information. We collect CCTV footage from various relevant locations, including nearby businesses, traffic cameras, and residential properties. It's essential to gather the footage promptly to prevent overwriting, as many systems have limited storage capabilities. Once collected, the video evidence is analyzed meticulously to identify relevant events, actions, or individuals. Significant clips are compiled into timelines to aid investigation and highlight key moments. The duration of the canvas can range from a few days to several weeks, even months, depending on the case's complexity, the number of locations involved, and the volume of the footage. For homicide investigations, it's crucial to trace not only where individuals went after the incident, but also where they came from. The canvas coordinator, mandated under the Major Case Management Framework, provides regular updates to keep the command triangle informed of progress and findings. Investigators actively engage with the community to gather insights about what has been seen or heard. We leverage social media and community outreach to enhance witness engagement. This structured approach ensures that all possible leads are thoroughly followed and documented.
Just to take how what the inspector said and how it looks actually when we're doing the work, we're going to refer to what we call the Naeem Akal homicide, which tragically occurred in May of 2021. On this date, May 29th, 2021, a lone gunman burst into the Chicken Land restaurant at Glen Erin and College Way Drive in Mississauga and shot 5 people, all from the same family, killing one of them, that being Naeem. The Homicide Bureau was contacted. We took carriage of the incident, and you can see on the screen there, like the inspectors alluded to, we start with our canvas. This canvas in particular lasted for several weeks. It involved, I would say, well over 25 officers working at various times. We were able to collect video surveillance of a suspect leaving. We then have to try and follow that individual on various video cameras recognizing that, say, a plaza may have video surveillance. However, when they leave that general facility, we then have to try and find them on another video. That could be a doorbell camera, that could be a dashboard camera or something. So we have to follow this individual around and ultimately follow them to a suspect vehicle. We were then able to track the suspect vehicle to the final destination, that being where the suspect vehicle eventually stopped, and obtained vital evidence along the way. This tragic incident dramatically impacted this lone family, not to mention the Mississauga community where it happened. So this is just a video we have here, just kind of highlighting the canvas of what we do. And what you'll see here is a guy is going to run by this Domino's Pizza, and that is our suspect. So that is the first piece of evidence we get. And as you can see, it's a male or a female. They have a hoodie on. They're wearing a mask. It's during COVID, and we don't know where they go. So we now have to try and track that person in a plaza. Luckily, eventually we were able to find them getting into a motor vehicle. We then identify the motor vehicle, and what we do is we follow it all along. You can see with the map there where we're following all along. Every one of those intersections needs to be checked north, south, east, west to see which way the vehicle went. It makes it incredibly difficult. As you see the still going by there, that is, we'll say it for lack of an argument, a Honda Accord. There are numerous Honda Accords that look like that on the road, and we have to be sure it's our vehicle. We go to every single intersection. We work our way north. You can see we're working our way north here. And we're eventually going right to Malton. So this canvas lasted over 28 kilometers over several days. And we're eventually able to track the suspect all the way to where the vehicle parked at 7720 Kimball Street in Malton. So that's from basically our 11 division in South Mississauga all the way up to Malton, where we located them. By tracking them the entire way, we were able to locate the suspect vehicle and establish vital information to lead us to who was responsible for this.
So just give you a quick resource cost analysis for 2024 to provide some perspective on costs. I analyzed 3 firearm-related cases where charges have been laid. It's important to note that these figures only reflect staff costs, excluding technical expenses of investigative travel and court time. For 2024, the average personnel cost for these 3 solved cases, each spanning 4 to 6 months, is a little less than $500,000 in resources per case. These are solved cases where charges have been laid. That number includes crucial court disclosure phase as well. In 2023, I approached the analysis differently by examining 2 active firearm-related homicide cases still under investigation by our office. Each of these cases represents a 13-month investigation. To date, the average personnel cost for these 2 cases is just shy of $1 million.
And I would, there's really 2 things I want to highlight. Going back to the original slide, demonstrating the canvas and tracking of that vehicle. Just continue to be incredibly impressed with how our team is able to not only do those types of things, but bring these investigations to a successful conclusion. Reality is you have an unknown suspect, gets in a vehicle, oftentimes stolen, disappears, and these gentlemen and their teams are the ones that are tasked with finding out who's responsible for the worst crime a person can commit. And when you consider disclosure issues, whether it be the numerous number of judicial authorizations and all of the work that you have to do and then defend in court, it really is at times like trying to win a boxing match with one arm tied behind your back. And, the reality is the people in that office make it look easy, but the expertise and professionalism that leads to them being able to come here today and say, well, of the 17 we've had today, we've made arrests or identified people responsible in 14, which is representative of some of the highest clearance rates in the country for a homicide unit. I just think that's worthy of mentioning. And then specific to the costs, these are, as Todd said, just salary dollars. They're not social cost. Doesn't include the medical staff that comes and provides life-saving services. Doesn't include the justice system, any sort of treatment, incarceration. This is dwarfed by what the reality of a cost of a homicide or shooting, for that matter, costs our community. And it would easily be in the neighborhood of millions and millions of dollars for one.
Thank you, sir. I'll now turn to our innovation and efficiency slide. Limiting a resource drain on community police operations is a priority to the Homicide and Missing Persons Bureau. To ensure our uniformed patrol officers are on the road and not tied up at a scene or being used on a lengthy canvas, in an effort to leverage resources already at hand and in collaboration with our cadet and auxiliary bureaus, we've developed a call-out system where immediate access to these resources are now available. Now deployed twice over 2 recent homicide incidents, this has been an excellent initiative. In 2023, it was identified that the Homicide and Missing Person Bureau was the largest consumer of video processing within the PRP Forensic Identification Bureau. More than 50% of their capacity was being used by my office. This primarily relates to video seized during canvassing or extracted from crime scenes. In response to this demand, a new Homicide and Missing Persons video processing unit has been established specifically to deal with these challenges. This dedicated resource will focus exclusively on handling homicide video, from the initial stages to the verdict. It's also been identified that many investigative analytical tasks could be effectively managed by a civilian criminal intelligence analyst. A strategy is currently being developed to expand this resource. I'd like to speak for a minute about the commitment to continue to expedite delivery of production order data in urgent situations. Truly successful homicide investigations are measured in hours and days and not weeks and months. Waiting for crucial evidence to be provided by cellular telephone providers is not a viable option. This practice is crucial to homicide investigations. This concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I open up for any questions.
Yes, Vice Chair Coley.
So I'm going to begin by saying thank you for coming today and sharing kind of the man hours and the expertise that goes into solving, homicide. But I am going to steal actually from Mayor Brown's line, and actually even our chairs, whenever they speak, they always say there's not a crime that can't be solved here. And you're just an example of what you did today about the amount of work that goes into it. So I do want to thank, of course, the leadership of Chief and our fantastic Deputy Nick Milanovich. But it really is an important thing that you shared today, because I think sometimes it's not seen behind the scenes that, it may happen today, but the amount of hours you take and the footage you have to follow, and how, because technology is evolving, ways you gather information has changed as well. So that means you have to stay on top of that. You have to be, so it's the same team that's not only handling all these other ways that they do it, but now there's all these newer ways to do it. And so thank you for that and continuing to do that. And I'm grateful to live in this region. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Before that, I've got Len Carby, then to the Chief.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the gentleman for this just incredible amount of work that is done in solving, these crimes. A couple things that kind of stood out for me is the amount of work that goes into tracking a vehicle from where the crime occurred to where you were. It's just amazing work, and I can remember at my own home, officers coming by asking, not on this particular case, for footage from my doorbell video to help them solve something that happened in the area. And so I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the value of that community engagement in making these videos available from doorbell cameras. And is that a significant, is making significant impact in helping you in that process of solving some of these crimes and tracking that with community engagement? So that's the first thing I wanted to speak a little bit about. And then the second thing is something Deputy Chief Nick talked about, is the amount of guns which are in our community that's pouring across our border from the United States. And how, are we addressing this? Of course, we can only find them once they are here, but a significant part of keeping our community safe is stopping that flow. And maybe you could speak a little bit for me on that as to what can we as a community do to, I know we're not taking over the job of, border security, but what can we as a community do better to prevent that flow of guns in from the United States?
So I can address the first question on community engagement. Community engagement is key to every homicide investigation, regardless of whether they have video or not. Cooperation with our community is absolutely key. We've seen it across many investigations this year where the community has come together and provided us with the evidence to solve cases. Whether it is acquiring video or eyewitness testimony or social media links or just information in general, it's crucial. Perhaps I'll turn it over for question 2 and 3.
Thank you, Inspector. Specific to the firearms, you're correct. It's definitely become an increasing issue in our community, and it does result in homicides and shootings. So very basically, we start off with what you would expect from a police service, and that's something that Peel and the people that make up our police service do incredibly well, which is the investigations and enforcement. We need to make sure that the community understands that if you possess illegal firearms in Peel, there's a really high chance that you're going to get caught, arrested, and charged with that. And we've demonstrated that this year. We've seized more illegal firearms from the region of Peel than we ever have in our history. Project 24K, Project Chrome, most recently the announcement in Los Angeles. These are all examples of us working with our partners in the U.S. to help make sure that our enforcement program is not just satisfactory, but it's the gold standard in the area of firearms. And ultimately, our goal is to take them off the street. Of course, we advocate for and with our partners at CBSA in relation to keeping firearms out of our country. And I do think that is an area where we need to continue to ask for more interdiction. And we need to make sure that CBSA is appropriately resourced so that they can prevent more firearms from coming into our country. And then, the last thing I would say is, in addition to the gun, it requires a person that's willing to use it. And a large percentage of the people that we arrest and charge with illegal firearms offenses, whether they be robberies, carjackings, home invasions, homicides, and shootings, have a prior history of violence and a prior history of violence with a firearm. And that's where I believe our police service and certainly our police services board has done well and has advocated for changes in those spaces. And so the answer to your last question, what should we do? I really think we should keep doing what we have been doing to push the lines further back on the criminals and enhance our community safety. We just have to keep with the momentum that we're so good at creating here in Peel.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, you were going to talk that up.
So I'm not going to be able to match the quality and content of these remarkable people that we have before us and their teams. I just want to acknowledge that there's a human side to all of this. All of them end up being advocates for families that are suffering the loss of somebody. And I just because I know Inspector Custance and Detective Sergeant Mavity and their teams, they end up developing relationships with the families that have lost somebody for a homicide for decades. It's not just the court process that they're intimately involved in. It's the anniversary of their deaths. They go on, and some of the investigators move on to other units and teams, and they still maintain their relationships. I think we're strong advocates for the quality of our people here at Peel Police, their moms, dads, coaches, volunteers in their communities. And then they take a call on an evening when they're not even in homicide anymore to speak to a family or a survivor. We talked about the Hendersons. There's multiple examples. So I just want to thank the team. Todd, please, to your team, Mike, all of them, thank you for everything you do to support this community. To be a victim of a homicide is really a rare thing if you think of 1.7 million population to be affected by a motor vehicle accident seems to be more common, right? And Mayor Parrish, Mayor Brown, I know you know your constituents will talk to you all day long about a noisy muffler. I'm just trying to just highlight the impact of the loss of life, whether it be from an accident, but more in this case, the homicide is so tremendous. It's a big burden to us, but it's your job, and you do an amazing job at it. So please convey that to your teams.
Absolutely. Mr. Bowden.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I'd just like to top up what you said, Chief, because of, Mike, the work that you've done on the Henderson case. The Paul and Flo Henderson, who raised Darian Henderson, are very good friends of mine through the guard community. And I think that if they believe that you could walk on water, and you've been so supportive of them since July the 28th, 2 years ago when Darian was murdered, and the continued involvement in keeping them up to speed on everything that's happening, or in this case, not happening, is so well received by the family. And I can tell you, and this, when the chief says that, the members of PRP are compassionate and sympathetic and, involved and engaged and all that, that's what the chief should say. From a board member, it's real what you do, and you're making an incredible difference. And thank you to you and all the people involved in this homicide. It's the worst thing that could ever happen. And because of your compassion and this case that I know so well, you've made their lives better. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden.
Thank you. I would only add, and we're getting a lot of these presentations, and the two patterns that keep emerging, one very disappointing and one very uplifting. The disappointing one is, and Rob Serpe knows this and the chief knows this, after any incident, I often reach out and I go, so can I ask, was this an illegal firearm? Did it come from the U.S.? Are the people known to the police? Are they on bail? Are they on probation? Do they have a criminal record? Yes, Chair, once again, yes, 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 and yes. Okay, does anybody else see a pattern here? We recently had another very successful press conference, and every now and again people see on TV and they reach out, some reach out and say, Chair, great words, etc. This last time around, I'm getting some emails and responses. I don't know what you're griping about. It's not the province, it's the federal government. It's not the federal government, it's the province. But I don't care. Can somebody fix it? Because all I know is we're going to run into another person with an illegal firearm, came from the U.S., that's known to police, that's on bail, that's on probation, that commits a crime, and they'll be on bail again next week, so that these good people have to take their lives in their hands to catch the same guy that we keep catching and releasing. So that's the disturbing pattern that carries on. And from Mayor Brown to all the rest of it, we continue to press on that point that something needs to be done by whomever. I acknowledge that some work is being done. I want to give credit where due. We still have a long way to go. The far more positive pattern that I've seen in all the years that I've been around. Oh my God, we are so good at Peel Regional Police at catching bad people. And the sad part is, I can't tell the full stories about the brilliance of police work that we do, because we don't want people to know how brilliant we are. But I know it, the board knows it, stories we will never tell. But to our people that investigate crime and catch bad guys, you are damn good at it. No one is finer. And I want to acknowledge that point. That makes I and the board very, very proud. With that, I have a motion of receipt from Mr. Carby, seconded by Mr. Boughton. All those in favor? That is carried. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. Item 3.2, Project Lantern, Missing Persons with Alzheimer's presentation. Jay Verslius, Manager of Community Safety and Wellbeing, Sergeant Vanderbrink, and member from the Alzheimer's Society, here to present on Project Lantern. Welcome.
Chair, and as I bring our partners up here, and we do these presentations, inclusive of the one that's coming for budget, about our lens to finding solutions for our pressures. these are remarkable individuals that are here. And Sergeant Vanderbrink, just a remarkable individual that leads a team that's in our community. And you do the budget presentations. We talked to you about how we've redeployed people into places. This is a brand new team that never existed years ago. Missing persons, and I know whether they be Alzheimer's or otherwise, have a huge resource demand. And our idea to get upstream to support that community, whether it be autism, vulnerable persons, is tremendous. So thank you for being here. John Versluis is our manager in community safety wellbeing. He and I have a history in another municipality that'll go unnamed, and I was happy to entice him to come here. But he is not a police officer, but he can navigate systems and social services like nobody else. John, and not only do I say he is, what's his actor? He's like Ben Affleck's body double, but he's a remarkable individual and a great asset to Peel Police. Our partners in the community, can I thank you tremendously for meeting us halfway. Listen, it's not my story to tell, but we are tremendous advocates for you to be resourced appropriately, because this is a perfect example of when you can come and meet us in an equation that helps serve the public, we can do some pretty amazing things. So Deputy DePat is not here today, but it's my privilege just to say thank you for being here. Thank you, Chair.
Well said, and a marvelous introduction. Please proceed.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that introduction, Chief, as always. It's much appreciated. Through you, Mr. Chair, good morning, everyone. As the Chief mentioned, my name is John Versluis. I'm a Manager of Community Safety and Wellbeing Services, working with Superintendent Paris Ismail, who many of you here will know. We want to thank you for the opportunity this morning to present on Project Lantern, which is a highly collaborative partnership with the Alzheimer's Society of Peel to help prevent or more quickly locate individuals with Alzheimer's dementia who have gone missing or at risk of wandering. And if you have had a parent or a loved one go through this, you'll know that this can be an ever-present concern for families and something they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And to your comment earlier, Mr. Carby, this does tie very neatly into the Vulnerable Persons Registry and how we're leveraging some enhancements there to better serve the community. I am joined, as the Chief mentioned, by Justin Vandenbrink, who is a sergeant in our Divisional Mobilization Unit, as well as Katie Griffiths, the Director of Community Services at the Alzheimer's Society of Peel. And it's these two individuals who have been primarily responsible for operationalizing this program and that you'll hear from mostly this morning. I also want to introduce Karen Fair with us from the Alzheimer's Society as well, who is the Chief of Community Programs and Services there, and again, a great partner to us here at Peel Regional Police. Before I turn things over to Katie and Justin, I just want to highlight that Project Lantern is one of many ways that CSWB Services is supporting what we would term priority populations, which are individuals that often generate calls for services which are typically non-criminal or can be better resolved in collaboration with our partners. And these individuals often have underlying health or social vulnerabilities that can be better served outside of a traditional police response. And we've created this Community Safety and Wellbeing Services Bureau and these types of interventions for two primary reasons. One is that we know it results in better outcomes for our community when we can get people the right help at the right time to address their underlying needs. And the other is that it's really to support our frontline officers by reducing the number of times that they go to these types of calls where we know that something proactive or further upstream could have prevented that call from happening in the first place. And as you'll hear from Justin and Katie, Project Lantern is a great example of how we're aiming to achieve both of these objectives by keeping older adults at risk of wandering safe in their homes and by dialing back the number of times our frontline officers are asked to drop everything to undertake a search in the community. Because in addition to the very clear human element here, there's also a significant resource consideration, because when we know that when we have one of these searches, on average, it takes about 7 frontline officers off the road for a combined total of 16 hours. And in 2023, we had one of these types of calls on an almost every other day basis. So this initiative is really trying to address that factor. And I know you're going to be talking about the budget presentation this morning, but we just want to impart that this is, these are the types of initiatives we're trying to do to get as much, to leverage our existing resources as much as we possibly can out in the community. So I'll stop there, but before I turn the podium over, just again want to extend our most sincere thanks and gratitude to the Alzheimer's Society of Peel, who has been such an absolute phenomenal partner to us in this initiative and in many other ways as well. So over to you.
Thanks, John, and good morning. So yeah, Project Lantern is in response to a gap that we identified in regards to missing people with dementia when they go missing. Just to briefly explain how important this is and when we're dealing with this vulnerable population, that there's approximately 17,000 people within our community that live with dementia or Alzheimer's. And according to the Alzheimer's Society of Peel, 6% of those people that live with dementia will go missing at some point. And unfortunately, 50% who are missing for more than 24 hours will be found injured or deceased. So our objective is twofold, like John said, is to prevent people from going missing, and in cases where we can't prevent them, to have a faster, better response to bring people home safely. At the heart of Project Lantern is our partnership with the Alzheimer's Society of Peel. We signed a MOU in April of 2023 and created a co-referral system, which allows us to make referrals for people we engage with to the Alzheimer's Society, and also when they are working with people that they can refer to us for people that they feel have a high likelihood of going missing so that we can take steps to prevent it. We primarily do this by conducting in-home visits with our divisional mobilization units. Once there, they have 3 goals. The first is to make that first link referral to connect them to our community partners. Second is we go over safeguarding measures. And these are simple processes, but are very important. We encourage everyone to contact the police right away when their person goes missing. And we also explain what that police response will be to help break down barriers. And so we have a better response. Too often do we get the phone call for someone who's been missing for 2, 3, 5 hours. And it creates much more a resource-heavy search. So the sooner we are aware of this and we can impart that information to the people we're engaging with, the better. We also encourage GPS tracking information. We have a list of several different options and price points to encourage people to get the GPS, because obviously when they're missing, that is one of the easiest ways for us to find them. And lastly, when we're in the home, we very much encourage the family to sign up for the Vulnerable Person Registry. And we don't just encourage it, but we assist them. We gather the information with them to ensure it's accurate, so that in the event that someone goes missing, we have the pertinent information when that phone call is made, not after officers arrive and required to need to gather it. And lastly, we engage with our Criminal Investigation Bureau to conduct a proactive video canvass, which in the event that someone goes missing allows us to get a leg up on the video canvas so we can get a direction of travel and hopefully a better description. So the outcomes we're hoping to get is to reduce the strain on front line, to find people faster, safer, and to prevent them from going missing. This started full-time in January 2024. Since that time, we've completed more than 200 Lantern engagements, and it's been very well received. There's been 13 people who have refused services, and usually that's in cases where the family has put their person in a secure long-term care facility where they don't really need the supports that we have to offer. In regards to this, it's very difficult for us to provide stats on what information that we've prevented. What I can say is that we have several success stories of people who have gone missing, but we find them quicker and safer. And I also can say that since May, there's been 10 resource-heavy, protracted investigations that have happened with missing persons with dementia. And I'm happy to say that none of those 10 people are ones that we engage with in Project Lantern. So we are confident that it's happening. And when referrals are made, not just with Project Lantern, but in general within CSWB, we know that there's a 36% reduction in call volume when a referral is made. So we are reducing stressors for our front line. And with that, I'd like to turn over to Katie.
Hi, everyone.
My name is Katie Griffiths, and I am the Director of Community Services at the Alzheimer's Society Peel. So this partnership between the Alzheimer's Society Peel and Peel Regional Police brings several benefits to our community and to individuals directly affected by Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. While we have always supported calls from the police, we have had care partners share that the police told them to call. Official referrals with consent from the person needing support had no official path. This left gaps and an increase for risk, a lack of appropriate services and education to enhance safety around the disease, and changes that would probably continue when left unsupported. The police also might be interacting with these people on multiple occasions. The original pilot started at 22 Division in Brampton. Since the expansion and official launch, First Link referrals from the police have continued to come from across the Peel region. Currently, our reports indicate that the majority of the clients referred reside in Mississauga. We have also been able to support the community safety and well-being team with literature in multiple languages for the diverse community we serve. I can also share that the conversations our team is having with the families are different now. We now share that the police are supporting a proactive approach to keeping someone safe at home. We can explain the idea of the safety plan engagement, and we have seen an increase in consent to refer to the police for proactive partnerships and the willingness to engage in the Vulnerable Persons Registry. Through this partnership, we have seen a 600% increase in police referrals since last year alone, and an increase of 2,344% from 2019 pre-COVID, and that's not a typo. Our families are sharing feedback. A care partner was so thankful to Project Lantern because she didn't know that ASP, Alzheimer's Society Peel, would be available to assist. The care partner is now receiving support and education through our team. When we can establish a rapport with the person diagnosed and their support person, we're able to connect them to more specific programming, services, and timely strategies. It is imperative that these supports are discussed as early as possible to reduce the number of missing incidents that could occur. Our Smart Care Navigator is the point of first contact for the majority of our Project Lantern First Link referrals. They triage based on a priority for need, and when recently one of our Smart FLCNs could not reach a person with dementia that lived alone, that had a referral from Project Lantern. This referral was unusual because the referral did not come through a missing incident. It came because the Peel Regional Police were involved for another reason, but the officer knew of Project Lantern and took the initiative to refer. We always call our referral source back if we have a failed contact, and this time the referring officer went above the call of duty to connect our care navigator and the client during a follow-up home visit. The Smart FLCN was then able to book a home visit and support the client with services and strategies so that they could stay safe and feel connected. The Alzheimer's Society Peel continues to engage not only to support our clients with our programs and services that we offer, but to enhance the knowledge of the community safety and well-being team, the Criminal Investigations Bureau, and any other referring officer. This occurs through formal training offered directly to new officers on the team, as well as to new recruits and when we informally connect when they make a referral. We have also continued to grow partnerships like this with all first responders. We feel that a person-centered approach and a person-centered language are key to developing a trusting relationship. Through Project Lantern, we have seen firsthand the difference that can happen when we change the way we speak. Words matter. People living with dementia and their care partners already face many stigmas, isolation, and face fears of not being able to manage, communicate, and keep each other safe. Having a community police force that understands the symptoms of dementia and how they can impact a person's ability to communicate, follow instructions, and to share who they are and what they need is integral to keeping people safe. Lastly, I'll share that with permission, this framework for the initiative was also shared with the Alzheimer's Society of Durham, who are starting to engage and improve their relationship with the police in the local community. The success of the community safety and well-being team in engaging and referring is making a huge difference in Peel, as was shared by Justin. We hope that Project Lantern not only continues to thrive in Peel, we hope that this is a model that can be used to support other communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Maybe I'll just top up what was said on behalf of, actually, Samita Kohli, I see you, the Vice Chair. No, you go first, please. I was just going to round it up. Go ahead, please. No. I just had a closing comment. You go ahead.
I feel like I'm at, when you have to pay the bill and two people are fighting who pays the bill? That happens all the time. I was at the launch of this at the headquarters, and I'll be honest, when I went that day, I was not aware of how much and what was involved. I was blown away after that because one is this is so in line with what the chief always says, and I know Deputy DePatt has said it repeatedly, is being proactive in our approach to looking at the community. I don't know anyone, I'm surrounded by people who have either a family member or an aging parent who they're so afraid of right now with Alzheimer's and dementia, or they're leaving them alone at home and trying to figure out how do I make sure they still have independence, but yet I can keep them safe in some way or the other. The registry is probably one of the most critical things that was shared that day. I know I shared it with many after because I don't think a lot of people know about that. And what it does in terms of cutting down the hours and being able to find them so much faster, because that fear of when your parent leaves and you don't know where they are, I can't imagine that. So I can't say how much and how important this project is for what you are doing. I also had a chance to watch it since then, and I've been kind of understanding what the Alzheimer Society of Peel does, and I can't believe the number of programs that you're running and the amount of engagement you're doing with the community. And you also don't have to have somebody who's been diagnosed. You're actually encouraging people to come in and just learn about how do we help our parents be more alert before they get to this stage. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening between the combination of this project that I hope more awareness comes of it. But what I'm proud to say is it's just one more thing that, the Peel Police is doing of being proactive. And, I know the chief always used this line about being the most proactive and innovative in the galaxy, but this falls so much under that. We have a huge aging population. And we know that, I know physicians who are trying to figure out how do I service this population. I know that seniors don't get appointments sometimes for six months, but a lot of it is related to these kind of things. So I'm appreciative of the work that's going in. We appreciate it as a board of the proactive approach that we take. And thank you, Chief. And I know Deputy DePatt is not here, but I hope he sees. And of course, I know John and Ferris, I know the amount of work that you guys are doing, trying to make sure from a community perspective. But Justin and the Alzheimer's Society, thank you for what you're doing with this. This is critical. And if you need us to share, I can't say how much we need to share this. It's free. You just have to register your parent. It's just such a simple thing to do. But there's so many resources that I think people aren't aware. So thank you for the work being done on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I so appreciate the value of the registry because I got a firsthand experience of how that helps us in finding someone who has gone missing. Often, we hear the narrative of funding for police being diverted to social services as though it's a either or, and not recognizing that a funding for police is a funding for social services. And so I wonder if you could lean also a little bit more into the additional capacity or skill that you have seen within our police service to be able to adequately deal with these situations, which are not apprehending criminals. It's really reaching out and providing support and help to someone in need. So from my perspective, our training has changed to allow us to grow our capacity in those spaces. So you as a community partner, I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about how you have seen the growth, if you will, in our officers and the skill level to be able to deal with situations like these, which are not criminal in nature, but providing support at a social service level.
Yeah, basically, through even the examples I offered, I think because of the stigma around the disease, a lot of people don't want to call the police. They are worried about that punitive nature of maybe not taking care properly or not doing the right thing for their loved one. And what we have found is through this partnership. The language that the police officers use when they're approaching the families is so different. And we're finding that our families are giving that feedback, that they're feeling supported, obviously, by those teams. And I just think that home visit and being able to offer that extra information right in that moment when they come into the home to do that visit and give real-time resources is huge. And then speaking like they know what we do, because when the officers know that we run day programs and a respite home and many other community services that they go in and talk about, they're not just talking about what Alzheimer's Society Peel does. It's amazing because I think they're building that trust and rapport with those officers. So I think it's been amazing, and I live in Peel, so I'm very proud to say that this is something that Peel offers our seniors and their care partners.
Awesome, thank you. That is meaningful, and I think it helps to underscore the partnerships that we have with community organizations like yours. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you, and I want to thank my two colleagues because you really set up what my thoughts are. I don't know, and I see the world in a very obscure way at 35,000 feet, but what we've just discussed is a microcosm of our universe going forward. The first lantern project, I'm pretty sure my mother started along with Mrs. Flamini and Mrs. Ratchopel, and I'll explain it to you. It was 40 or 50 years ago in old Cooksville when one of them was looking after the grandmother, and new immigrants to Canada, kids, school, et cetera, all working moms out of the house. But grandma was a bit of a wanderer. And back in the day, you did not, and they got frustrated if you wouldn't let them go out the door. And it's not like you took them somewhere to get meds or whatever. So it was sort of agreed they'd let grandma walk out the door and she better make sure she turned left on a bruised road, and she did. And then she had to make sure she turned left on Old Pheasant. And then my mom would phone and say, I see her. And she'd keep going up to the top of the street, Burslem. And then Mrs. Ratchopo would say, I saw her pass and I saw her come back down, so I know she's on her way. Then my mother would see her and say, I won't phone till Mrs. Flamini phones because she's back on her way. That was the first Project Lantern. So it takes a village. Here's the next problem, though. That was Mrs. Flamini. You've probably heard me say this before. The greatest good news I have and the greatest bad news I have as the chair of the Board of Health is you're all going to get to 100 years old. Well, no, that's really good news. What's the bad news? You're all going to get to 100 years old. How could that be bad news? Because the majority of you are going to outlive your bodies, your minds, your money, your family, or any combination of all of the above. We just learned this month Canada has the lowest birth rate in the G20. So you're not going to have kids. When mother passed away, father had 4 children. We visited 8 times a week on that Old Pheasant. Just because he had a lot of kids. We were the that will be gone for many people. So that will be the challenge of our times. The reason I say in microcosm, and I have to thank the gentleman to my right and the team, what gets all the headlines is when we use the stick. So the press conference for Project Chrome, the press conference for Project 24 Carrot. But we go out of our way to say the carrot is our community safety and well-being program. That's where our salvation lies. You've heard me say before, Councillor Parrish, Mayor Perry, you'll get a kick because you were the teacher. I use this analogy a lot. Remember being in grade 4 or 5 or whatever it was that year? They go, let's talk about what you want to be when you grow up. These folks have heard me use this one before. And in grade 4, whatever year we did it, I remember, well, Joey wants to be a hockey player. Bobby wants to be a police officer. Peggy wants to be a veterinarian. Nobody ever said, I want to be a single mother that prostitutes my body to pay for my kids so they can eat. Nobody ever said that. Nobody said, I want to break legs for the mob. Nobody ever said, I want to be a drug. Nobody ever said. And yet somewhere they got off-ramped. And they weren't someone that wanted to be a criminal or do those. They were someone who more likely was homeless or abused or had a learning disability or didn't get the supports that they needed. Then they went down that chasm. For years, and I've just been corrected by Minister Tabolo. Carolyn, you've heard me say this for years. And remember, the dollar you give at the front end saves $6 or $8. And Minister Tabolo said to me, Nanda, why do you keep saying that? I go, because it's true. It was true 20 years ago. Now we're saving $16 to $18 per dollar. I didn't know that. He goes, you know what it costs to incarcerate and do everything, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he goes, so Nando, it's worse than you think. So the point that I want to make is this is the work we should be doing. We spend a lot of time talking about the stick, the projects, the president, we have got to put bad people in jail, et cetera, et cetera. But to the credit of the community safety and well-being, that the Region of Peel was the first to perfect our plan in the middle of COVID when all of my colleagues asked the Premier for an extension. We had it done. We know we are doing this work as well, and it will get us more success than anything else. Last thing I'm going to say is, I was talking about my mother doing this work. I want to single out Mayor Parrish. Mayor Parrish has done this work for her entire career. Everything she's done was community safety and well-being before anybody called it that, because you have to have a compassionate side and understand that it does good work. And that's why things like Metamorphosis and the team we have around the table now, we are listening to this as well. The press conferences about catching bad guys in the stick and more officers and more boots on the ground. But we know that this piece exists and it is more important at the front end. And so this is our universe going forward, and we do all of it well. We have to redouble down on this side of it as well, but we're cognizant of it, we're aware of it, and we're doing good work, and we need to do more at the front end before they become problems for people in uniform and other institutions that they're invariably going to have to deal with. So really see this from a big picture point of view, and I thank you for the work you're doing for this great presentation. Receipt moved by Mayor Parrish, seconded by Mayor Brown. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay. Moving on, item 3.3, 2025 Peel Police Budget Presentation. Nisha Nduriapa, the chief, and our chair, Mr. Boughton. I believe you'll be moving over there, and you're going to give us a presentation.
An amazing morning of presentations, and so I'm sad to be the icing on the cake for this sequence of events, but we have some remarkable people. So Mr. Boughton, I thank you for joining me here. I think the presentation deserves the platform of us doing it from here versus our chairs, but I do want to say that the team is going to also contribute to it. Mayor Parrish, Mayor Brown. We've had a couple of conversations this week, and don't want it to be Groundhog Day, but I do think those that are watching, kudos to those publicly that are watching this and the media. I think they do deserve our full effort as it pertains to the budget presentation. So, Mr. Bowden, thank you.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chair Ianika, who I see has just escaped. It's both an honor and a privilege to present Peel Regional Police's 2025 budget along with the Chief this morning. I address you today not only as the Chair of Finance and Collective Bargaining Committees, but also as someone deeply committed to the safety and well-being of Peel Region. In my 5 years on this board, with my board colleagues, Regional Chair, the Chief, and the Police Service has given me a comprehensive understanding of the challenges we face and the measures necessary to keep our community safe and well-served. This year, I was also appointed to the Ontario Police Arbitration and Adjudication Commission and continue to serve as a director with the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards. These roles reinforce the importance of our mandate under the Community Safety and Policing Act, the CSPA, which officially came into effect this April the 1st actually, and deepen my resolve to fulfill this mandate in a way that supports Peel's diverse and growing population. This budget reflects our two primary commitments under the CSPA, responding effectively to Peel's unique and evolving safety needs and fulfilling our obligation to provide adequate and effective policing. Each decision within this budget was informed by a growing set of complex issues, from rising response times and mental health crises to increasing concerns around crime prevention and overall community well-being. The budget before you is not merely a fiscal exercise. It is a strategic plan, meticulously crafted to address both our legal mandate and our community's pressing needs. We recognize that Peel is experiencing substantial growth, and with it, a growing need for proactive public safety measures. Public safety demands consistency, reliability, and resources, and the 2025 budget reflects this commitment to keeping Peel safe, secure, and well-supported. Furthermore, Peel's position as one of the first police boards in Ontario to complete collective bargaining with both our associations this year speaks to our commitment to stability and progress within our workforce. The board's priority in reaching these agreements in 2024 was clear: to maintain a supported, high-performing police service and to build on the positive, collaborative relationships we fostered with our members. These agreements aren't just administrative accomplishments. They are foundational to our ability to deliver on our mandate for effective policing. A motivated and stable workforce is critical to our service, especially in challenging times, and we believe these agreements will strengthen our ability to recruit and retain the skilled officers and civilians needed to serve our community well. In presenting this budget, I also want to acknowledge Council's position. We understand that tax implications are always a consideration, and that Peel's residents rely on all of us, on the board, on regional council, and on the police service to find the right balance between fiscal responsibility and public safety. This is not a challenge we take lightly. Each decision on this budget has been guided by our core responsibility to ensure adequate and effective policing as required by the CSPA. By prioritizing key investments in technology, staffing, and specialized units, this budget provides Peel Regional Police with the necessary tools to effectively respond to critical issues, from increasing auto thefts and intimate partner violence to addressing mental health calls and managing organized crime. As you consider this year's budget, I want to stress that this proposal is both a continuation of and an advancement towards a safer Peel. It is based on rigorous analysis, countless hours of consultation, and a shared vision for a community that is both thriving and secure. Our financial request reflects specific pressing needs. Every aspect of this budget has a purpose that supports community safety and enhances Peel's capacity to adapt to its rapid growth. While fiscal constraints are a reality, public safety remains our first and only priority as a board. Under the CSPA, our focus is set on the long term, ensuring Peel's policing model is not just responsive, but anticipate and meets future needs. With that, I'm honored to now turn it over to Chief Dariappa, who will provide a more detailed look at how this budget is structured to support the board's and Peel Regional Police's objectives for 2025 and beyond. Thank you once again for your partnership, insight, and commitment to the safety of our community.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. And can I first thank the board for your trust in us as a team. I do want to say, I want to acknowledge that you have obviously a very prescribed role to make sure this community stays safe, and that some of you on this board have another hat that has to make it work. I do hope, like, if you and I spent the whole day together, just to sort of make sure you know that our minds are set, obviously, not with blinders on, to say that this is what we need, this is what we need, this is what we need. You know, if you look at maybe a sliver of the presentations that preceded us, you've got my commitment and our commitment as a team to find other ways. We really are. And I don't like the idea of competing with other police services or the municipalities, But I do want you to have the fullest of confidence that you're not going to find, well, maybe somebody that comes after me, whoever that is, can think of other ways to do things differently. It is our heart and soul to try to find other ways to meet the needs of this community in a way that's never been done before. And then, just, I don't want to get to the last slide right now, but what you're getting to is, one of my deputies used this term earlier. We do want to address potential crisis on the horizon, and that's why we're before you. But before we get there, I do need to walk through our heart and soul, because I think Mayor Parrish and Mayor Brown know there are our partners in the community that are watching and listening to the why behind the ask. And the why needs to be predicated on an approach that is Peel unique. And that is what we do here in Peel, is find other ways, and then thank our community partners and John Versluis and the sergeants and the homicide teams that are showing us the other way. This slide really represents, I don't know how many things we could put in the bottom. We talked about the rate of growth here in Peel, which is double digits rates, official and unofficial. We know what's happening in Sharianika. I think we all quote the whole Halifax analogies and the Montreals and the Vancouvers. But the reality is the growth rate does drive a lot of our forecasting. But we do have other impacts, and we chatted a little bit about the impact on things that are coming down the road, inclusive of the travelers that come through the airport. But the airport, it's nice that they come through the airport and they go to wherever they're intending to go, but the logistics impact and everything around it is so unique to us that, I wish my other chiefs bore the burden of the logistics hubs, the gold thefts, and everything else that came along with it, inclusive of, soccer teams coming through FIFA that are going to require 1,000 officers a day. I know it's cost recovery, but we've got to get them off a plane and the security aspects. But, if you could map all the 5 major highways and put them on a plot, they all come through us here. And I know I've stood before the board when we had to shut down highways and take thousands of angry calls from people saying, why are you shutting down my logistics hub? And then we've got, the biggest hallmark of our region is it's so diverse. 70% of the people in this community identify as diverse communities, and of which I think the last data I saw was 53% are saying that they're new Canadians. As an immigrant, we're absolutely blessed to be in this country that has given us so many opportunities, and it's our hallmark. And to sustain that requires us to make sure we meet the needs of this community. A lot of people will walk through strategic plans and say, check. But can I tell you, our aspirational statement of being, in the galaxy, the most innovative, progressive, inclusive, actually is a dotted line. And we talk with our team. This is our playbook for everything we do. If it's not innovative, meaning if we're not pressing into new spaces, if we're not progressive, meaning continuously evaluating what we're doing and how we serve the public, and we're not inclusive in terms of making sure our people on the inside are looked after and good because they're the ones that intersect with the public, then we're failing. And so I just say to you, yes, this is a slide, but it is the lens for how we deliver everything at Peel. And if you were ever to question me as a board on, hey, Nish, why did you folks put your time and energy in X, Y, or Z? Ultimately, I'll be able to anchor it in here. Community safety, well-being, and for those that are watching on listen, this is where if you're a shark and you're biting into something, your eyes could roll back because all of you know this. But I think it's deserving of the public to know that this is our lens to doing everything. Traditional model of policing, put more resources in the red. Emergency rooms, paramedics, firefighters, this is our bread and butter. The public expects us to be good in this space. But I want to acknowledge the fact that in a few years, community safety well-being may not be the most current philosophy. It may have evolved, but right now, it speaks to our approach here in Peel, and it's a budget presentation, and I'm telling you about another philosophy. Listen, what we've not done well is trying to find ways to mitigate risk. Project Lantern and our partners are gone now. Is one example, and I know John tried to quantify hours spent that we're saving. You were serving people better, but we're actually getting cops back to doing what we should be doing in the red. A little bit of investment with community partners to get upstream and mitigate risk is what we're doing. Prevention, yes, we've probably been doing it for many years. I, as a 15-year-old kid in another police department, handed out lock it or lose it, pamphlets on cars, on windshields, which probably annoyed people. Prevention was what we've done well. It'll always be our bread and butter. But we've now moved on to a more mature approach of where can we improve systems, whether it be health, education, and, the mayors and Chair Yanika, thank you for the ability to co-chair community safety well-being at the region. We're all on board. Precarious housing, food insecurity, all these issues make it easier for me on a day-to-day basis to get to your break and enter call. So this philosophy is not just about the right services at the right time, but it's meaning that we're serving this region way better. And this is why we're on platforms nationally, internationally, to say what we're doing better. Do we get it right all the time? No. I can tell you the board knows because you read the reports of where we misstep from time to time. But hey, we've got humans serving humans, and we're taking this lens at Peel. And, we could spend all day peeling back where we're trying to invest in this space. You heard from Sergeant Vanderbrink is in a divisional mobilization teams. They're non-enforcement. I know we'd like to throw everybody at responding to calls, and it's hard to quantify how well the impact is, but they're the ones that are doing the pressures in the community that we've not done before and seeking multi-sector collaboration. It is our playbook at Peel to do that. And I joked earlier, am I walking my way out of a job if we continue to do this? I kind of am. But you all know that we unfortunately have pressures in the community that deserve, it's not quite as easy as sticks, as you mentioned, and hugs. It's not hugs and sticks. There's a huge gray area in between, and we have to be present in that. Our intimate partner violence unit is the foremost one in North America. Is it perfect? No, but it's better than the way it was done before. And we'll get to how we're serving communities. And the presence of one in Mississauga is going to be significant for us. And I do want to thank, both Mississauga and Brampton for allowing us to find places in other buildings where we can put our officers with our 14 partners. This Safer Roads team, traffic and road safety issues. We had an 11-year-old get rushed to downtown yesterday. It's heartbreaking to see the pedestrians and the individuals. They're not carrying guns or firearms. They're not carjacking. They're just people carrying out their life that are impacted by road safety issues. It is easily the number one issue for every ward councillor I speak to, every constituent. It's not even the noise pollution piece, it's the safety of people on the roads, is an issue for us. And we've redeployed officers to focus. We have 3,000 people we know in Peel Region. If I were to tell you how bad their driving record was, and the driving record is inconsequential. Most of them don't even have licenses, but they're driving a vehicle and they're causing harm. We've got people just focused on them. But the community safety well-being lens is that all these individuals that we see, whether they're impaired or they're driving and they've got alcohol in the system, we're referring them to addictions counseling. And not all of them take the referral, but in my space, this is something we can do so we don't see them the next day. From an alternate response standpoint, not only do we have probably Canada's only alternative response unit being dispatched through our communication center, meaning it's a non-police response for the things that we probably don't need to be at. If we don't need to be at them, they're the ones that are waiting for a week, where you hear from constituents and people in the public saying, I call police, but they're not coming. We don't need to be at some of them. But we do have really good partners in the community that are helping us with that, inclusive of the Safe Center response team, which is, if there is a verbal domestic in a home or there's an argument between partners, does it need a police response, or does it need intimate partner, family violence, crisis workers that know how to off-ramp that so the cycle of violence gets interrupted? Yes, it does. We have special constables, and Mayor Parrish, I think it might have been your suggestion in 2019 when I got here, is like, do we need to be at all these things? Do you need a gun at the hip? Well, sometimes you do, but we're within our legislative parameters. We are finding ways to have special constables go to calls, pick up evidence, do things that we're waiting for a police officer from the police college to go to, so they can get back to what they're meaning to do. But I'm not just telling you what we're doing differently. All of these involve multi-sector collaboration, all the step of the way, and it's to turn the dial down on all of our pressures. So the team and I, like the slide used to say, our areas of accomplishment, and there's no end state for what we're doing here. This is just spaces that we're pressing into. The investigative outcomes, whether it be 24 Carat, Project Chrome, gun trafficking, the resolution of homicides, everything we do, we could spend a whole day going through all the vignettes of things, but our people, and you'll see it in our solvency and clearance rates, are some of the best people on the investigative side. And that's our commitment to relentlessly pursue those that want to create harm in a region. We're coming for you, without a doubt. The targeted enforcement activities is also a remarkable space where it's not just Ridgeway, Trinity Commons, it's the individuals that are looking for those that are carrying a firearm on a day-to-day basis is absolutely important. One of the things that we've seen, that we've rolled out across the region, is our CERT teams. We started piloting it in a couple of divisions, downtown urban areas. Now every division has it. They're on foot patrol on bikes. Everybody saw the video of the truck ramming a cruiser, and then kind of the foot chase around the mailbox and everything. That being said, those individuals are CERT members. They're in the communities. They're being available for foot patrol, bike patrol, and high prevalence areas that are needed. And they have helped us reduce some tensions in some communities, which a regular patrol division can't meet necessarily. Innovation technology. And, I'm going to ask the depths to jump in once in a while. We just don't want to show high volumes of technology-related demands. They're all a platform for us to serve the community better. Last year's budget is a perfect example of that. And I know Anthony is going to speak to our Community Safety Operations Center. It's emergency operations centers, EOCs, they exist in towns, cities, municipalities, every police department. It's like the Minority Report with all the screens on it. But we've shifted ours to the community safety well-being lens. We want to have community safety agencies that can access it and use the data to shift things in a better way. I spoke to alternative response, which I can continue to do. Can I stop on the leadership advocacy? This is kind of a co-owned slide between you as a board and me. I can tell you, we may irritate some other municipalities right across this country because we're the first, you are the first to come alongside the issues that we're seeing, whether it be bail offenders, auto theft, needing more seats at the police college. Regional council's been amazing at it. There's a reason why the auto theft is a national issue, but the only scanner is here in Brampton. There's a reason why Minister Varani and our provincial Attorney General and Solicitor General are soliciting our feedback. There's a reason why we're the ones giving deputation at House of Commons on a variety of issues, from coercive control, you name it. It's because we don't want to take this sitting down. We have a role to advocate for while we're here in the office, and that is one of the hallmarks of Peel. So we're not going to break each one of those down, and I do recognize this is a significant board meeting, but as I said to you, technology is a platform for doing better. And maybe at this point, I'm going to ask Anthony. We've not done this traditionally. It's usually been me, and I'm not trying to abscond from my responsibility to be the front man for all this, but I do think the team represents the rest of the iceberg under the water, and maybe I can have Anthony give me a break for 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think by the iceberg analogy, he means cold and wet for me. But I will, if you could go to the next slide, Chief, I'll go through the buckets and talk about next generation 911, which is something we touched on earlier today. And that's really being able to invest in technology that allows our humans to answer calls quicker so that our community in their times of need can be heard and we can send someone. What I do want to note here, though, is it's still all predicated on the women and men in that call center. And 1 million calls a year come through that call center, 700,000 of which are 911 calls. And what the technology has essentially done is they still don't get breaks. They just answer 911 calls a lot faster, down from about 3 minutes to about 10 to 12 seconds. And so it's very important to know that it's still the human touch. And can I just pause there and just tell you, my philosophy in innovation and technology when it comes to policing is high tech equals high touch. It's meant for us to have a human touch with our community every single time that we can. And in this case, just doing it faster. Next slide, please, Chief. We will be the first police agency to operationalize risk data collection. And what does this mean? In the lens of community safety and well-being, it provides our officers and our members a modernized way to collect, consume, and operationalize data. Let me just give you one example. With all the heat maps that we give our officers about where crime is taking place so that we can have preventative patrols, we now also give our officers heat maps on where the social factors like mental health and addiction issues, food insecurity, housing insecurity issues occur, so that they can partner with the upstream agencies to be there before a call to police comes in through the 911 center. And we collect that data now, and we'll be able to operate, and we are operationalizing that data for our officers. And you can see here from the graph or from the infographic, that we do refer over 850 referrals to CSWB based on the data that we now collect. Next slide, Chief. Chief, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to go through this or if you wanted to explain this, but I'm certainly happy to take this through.
I've let you have enough fun for a few seconds. I'll take it back. But no, Anthony, please jump in at any point. So we mentioned to you technology as a platform. We have in our 911 communication center, it's still being built out, the ability to look at incidents and not be defined by geographic boundaries. So if one patrol division has X amount of officers, another one has another one, the intent is to look at the whole region as a whole from time of day, day of week for urgent related issues and be able to shift resources appropriately. And maybe Anthony, this use case example is one that is probably worthy of just talking about because it transcended 2 municipalities and was high profile.
So the Community Safety Operations Center is essentially a coordination of all our resources within the PRP and a collaboration with our external partners to bring all the information together in any one given time, whether that's an acute call, whether that's a coordinated service response, someone in a mental health crisis, that we can bring mental health professionals, live stream in, and provide all the information through one resource. It allows our officers to utilize their time more effectively and allows the police to utilize less resources most times in any given one situation. What you see before you is an incident in which a Lamborghini was stolen with violence, and through the Community Safety Operations Center and through CCTV cameras, the Lamborghini was tracked in real time to avoid things like police pursuits, danger to community. It was broadcast and provided in real time to our officers who were responding, and an apprehension was made and likely lives saved in this particular incident. This is just one of many success stories. You heard earlier today about the Vulnerable Persons Registry, and the CSOC also uses that information for the coordination of resources as well when we have missing persons, particularly in the area of vulnerable persons.
Thanks, Anthony. So we've been very appreciative of both municipalities allowing us access to their traffic cameras, CCTV cameras, and we continue to lobby. Listen, we're not like the UK where you can't turn a corner without being captured on video, but I think community expectations have risen to the acceptance to a certain degree of the need for us to be able to resolve. Like the homicide was one example, but there's examples of us being able to see somebody that was on a bridge about to take their life, but the Community Safety Operations Center was able to identify the individual, make a phone call to the family. Family was able to call in and to help resolve the issue on a bridge, which we probably would never been able to do previously without the access to technology. Automated license plate readers are one of the technology pieces that our budgets previously have been able to allow us to access, not just the ability to read a license plate effortlessly, but in the last year or two, especially with license plates and the validation stickers and everything that's been sort of de-bureaucratized, the ability to identify people with the volume of vehicles on the road is a tremendous asset to us. And I'm just going to play this video. I guess I can do that from here.
ALPR is a state-of-the-art onboard camera system in our patrol vehicles. It not only acts as a typical dash camera with multiple angles, it simultaneously scans license plates as we drive and alerts the officer of any anomalies, which we refer to as a hit. A hit can include many things, such as stolen license plates or vehicles, unlicensed or suspended drivers, and it can also assist the officer in detecting offenders with active warrants, as well as locating victims during an Amber Alert. To avoid being tagged by the ALPR, please ensure that you fulfill your legal obligation to renew and validate your license and plate. This will not only prevent you from being issued a ticket, but it'll allow the ALPR to focus on finding suspicious vehicles on our roads, enhancing public safety, and disrupting organized auto theft. For more information, please visit peelpolice.ca/ALPR.
So historically, our officers would have had to run each license plate that they drove by, you know, 1 A, B, C, D, F, 1, 2, like, and now it's done automatically, which means that inadvertently we are catching criminals when they're leaving scenes. We're seeing suspended drivers. More recently, we had a family call in to ourselves back to the missing persons. An elderly woman with dementia was in her vehicle. She was licensed to drive, but had been missing for hours. And because we were able to put the license plate on, an officer driving by was able to locate the vehicle just inadvertently because it just captures all the license plates. So not only does it result in our ability to enforce traffic-related issues, but this is every vehicle has to be outfitted with one of these. And on the back end, there's a technological piece to it, but it certainly has been an asset for us here in Peel. One of the shifts we've had, and again, back to relieving the pressures of our front line and being able to not necessarily send an officer to every call, is the consolidation of some of our efforts. It's sort of not front-facing, but our ability to create an online reporting bureau. And Anthony, maybe you want to top this up, but our individuals, and this has only been since March of this year that we've been able to get it fully functional. But since March of this year, 8,000 reports that would have normally gone to a patrol officer are getting routed online. Now, online doesn't sound the best way necessarily. Sometimes people do want to speak to somebody with a heartbeat, but it is an absolute way to take some of these calls that would normally have sat on the books for a long time, off-ramp them. And so, things like an LCBO, theft of gas, and all these ones are going. So Anthony, I don't know if it's worth you just topping that up.
I'll chime in here very quickly. And with the implementation of artificial intelligence in the 911 call center, some of the, and I use these in parentheses, lower priority calls can now be off-ramped from 911 to automatically fill out a report, where for many people, getting a report number and reporting that report number somewhere else is a very important piece of being able to address the situation. So we're doing that in relation to online reporting, but Deputy Andrews has established a unit to ensure that the follow-up from that is then the high-touch piece from the high-tech piece is then come around nicely. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Anthony. The unit we presented to the board at an offsite in 2023, and we were given the resources to actually stand the unit up in this calendar year. But we also repurposed existing assets. 60% of the unit was made up of pre-existing assets, and what we've seen is a significant uptake from our community in this sphere, and we anticipate that unit will have to grow.
Thanks, Mark and Anthony. So when the NG 911 investment came in and we were able to use AI to stop having a human call every pocket dial back, 5 of those people have been rolled into this team and unit. So you can see where technology has freed up human resources, but we've been able to apply them to other places where it's almost like an exponential benefit to us organizationally. So I think understanding the growth of our region is also a critical piece to the rest of the narrative on our budget presentation. Is these spaces we want to discuss as we move through the rest of the presentation. But all of it is rooted in our 4 priorities that are laid out in our strategic plan. And it's not to diminish a break and enter at a house, but these are, at moment, our 5 major priorities. And that is violent crime, mental health and addictions, road safety, and then, as you've heard earlier, priority populations. If we could find a better label for this, we would find one, but that is those experiencing homelessness. It could be youth-related issues, seniors, and we bucket them under our priority populations. They're not always vulnerable people, but they're ones that require service delivery that is unique to Peel Region, and that could be diverse communities, et cetera, as well. This next slide is one which I know both councils have seen already, is maybe perhaps the most poignant one. And I said it to some of you before. If I could label this as 2024 factors impacting us, it would be absolutely accurate. In 2023, perhaps maybe 20% of this slide would have been relevant. The impact of foreign pressures on our region, without a doubt, and I know there are protests and mass gatherings in Toronto and other places, which, because it's the place to go to, there are things that are unique to Peel and Lower Mainland BC that none of my colleagues out of 53 police chiefs in Ontario can claim ownership to. They're very specific to us. And when the RCMP made an announcement recently, can I tell you, most of the data they were quoting are the work that has occurred right here in Peel. And so, our ability to navigate all parts of the community is a high demand. I think right up to yesterday, one of our mayors, and I won't single him or her out, messaged me about just sentiment in our community regarding Diwali, right? We have multiple communities impacted by themes that require our attention. And, for example, the extortions that we've seen that are here, Edmonton, Lower Mainland BC, right down to Sacramento, California. We are the heartbeat outside of India. And I can tell you that being able to assign 22 people for one calendar year exclusively to investigate extortions, which are shootings, business communities, people being harmed, is we hosted an extortion summit, which is kind of an odd thing to say, but those 22 officers came from somewhere. They weren't sitting around waiting for work. There's a trickle back in terms of our ability to investigate localized investigations in all the divisions, et cetera. But that's resulted in over 60 investigations, complex ones, over 160 charges, and probably us being subtly quoted by the RCMP for the work. But this is something we could never have predicted. And it's a trend. Maybe it'll diminish. The public order needs for mass protests, I think, councils would know, we have in excess of probably 30,000 hours, Lauren, I can't remember the data, of officer time above and beyond what they're supposed to be doing has been spent managing mass protests, sometimes peaceful gatherings, but the peaceful gatherings also require the need for us to make sure that it's peaceful, and whether they be on a roadway or marching down a road, an increased presence from us. This is not unique to Peel. It is a phenomenon right across the country, and I can just specifically say there is no funding to offset our ability to overtime officers to show up to a protest. Myself, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, Edmonton have all spoken. It is an advocacy piece that is one worth discussing still with the board and council for us to make sure that we have streams to offset this. And listen, we don't want to just tell a story of doom and gloom. Back to our legislative and judicial advocacy for auto theft, bail reform, 50%, and we said it this week at Project Sledgehammer, Chair Yanika, you were there, 50% of all of our violent offenders that we arrest here in Peel are already on a form of release. It has not diminished despite our advocacy. More needs to be done. It is not something we brag about. We do have one of the highest rate of registered sex offenders in our community. In September alone, I think over 15, Nick, federal parolees were arrested right here in our region for breaching their former release. And a small percentage of individuals create the greatest harm. If we could just put a thumb down on all of them, can I tell you, we could go back to doing the business that the community expects of us. But all of these things result in tremendous amount of resources. Nick, maybe perhaps you can top up the last bit of the slide as it pertains to the investigative demand.
Thank you, Chief. You know, the only thing I would maybe begin with is these environmental factors are definitely factors in 2024. But what I think is also important to point out and share is we see them as continuing to be factors in 2025 and perhaps increasingly so. Issues like border security result in firearms flowing into our country, drugs flowing into our country, but also our vehicles flowing out of our country. It's something we've all collectively spoken about before. International organized crime and transnational organized crime. The same things that draw our community to Peel and make it an attractive place to live and to work are the same things that draw international and transnational crime to Peel. There's a lot of opportunity here for them as well. And so when you consider the type of crime, which has changed, the presence of violent offenders out on our streets, border security, and the type of international organized crime that is targeting our community, and you add those together, what you end up with are trends in our community and the types of things that we've probably all at one point or another received calls about. Auto theft, carjackings, home invasions, gender-based violence. You could really apply the pressures that we're seeing in those spaces, or I should say assign responsibility for the pressures that we're experiencing in those spaces and those trends we're experiencing. The responsibility for that and what's causal behind it are these four factors. And so in addition to the traditional police response of enforcement, some of the things that we do and have traditionally done very well, we're also attacking these four spaces in an attempt to make a difference.
Thank you, Nick. And this next slide, not to just, we don't want to be data heavy, but the first three boxes on the left are probably one of the most poignant ones. We have a staggering number of home invasions that continue to be a trend. We'll talk to auto theft shortly, but the means to steal a car are now shifting from taking it off your driveway at night while you're sleeping to now while you're going to get groceries. And so just those three data sets on the left of the screen represent this year alone 900 additional investigations year over year. So that's 900 that the same amount of officers last year were dealing with. And I don't want to diminish any of these things, but the increase in family and intimate partner violence that is reported continues to be an issue for us. Our top two calls for service are either mental health and addictions or family and intimate partner violence. And these aren't like the nuisance ones. So the family, intimate partner, all of these have a ripple effect in terms of making a community and a family feel vulnerable. I think all the WhatsApp group chats that both mayors probably have to deal with, Cherry Nika, yourself, our board members that hear from the community are all dotted line rooted in one of these things happening on one person's street and the entire community ends up feeling it. Firearms continue to be a problem. If I can tell you, there's, I think one of the board members asked about what would solve it. Maybe it's Mr. Carby as it relates it. Nobody has a solution. And I not use this anecdotally. If you can go to Texas or Florida and have the lawful ability to have a firearm without a permit and have it concealed just means the ability to acquire firearms. And then this is not an attack on the Second Amendment, but intrinsically, this country has a completely different philosophy. But to be in proximity to a country that is diametrically opposite, it just doesn't allow us to have any other solution other than to have to deal with this ripple effect. So almost every 30 hours, we're seeing a firearm being seized. Three things need to happen. One is we need to continue to be able to do the work that our teams do and be supported for the investigations in firearms trafficking and the joint forces work that we're doing locally. But one thing needs to happen is we need to have a better strength across border with our U.S. counterparts. We've asked the federal government for that to be able to get the information, intelligence we need to know how it's coming here and to work cooperatively. But the third is legislative and border security reform needs to continue to happen that treats firearms offenders in a way that has never happened. Mark, did you want to top that up?
If I could, Chief, I'd like to double down on the great work that you heard presented this morning by the Homicide Bureau. We've had 43 shootings, attempt murders this year. So for perspective, all that work is replicated at the divisional level, but on 43 occasions. We've had 17 homicides, crossing our fingers. But all that work that you saw, the great work, the court preparation, the legal obligations that are imposed on the investigations, all that work is multiplied across all the divisions.
Thanks, Mark. And even the data we hear is just January to September. And we've got one quarter still yet to fill in on this data. Mr. Brown?
When you see the illegal firearms, and we've gone through, 5+ years on the board, and every time there's a conference, where are the firearms from? And DC Milanovic, where at one, I think there was 20 on the table, 19 were from the United States, and the 20th one wasn't identified where it was from. There's now an epidemic starting in the United States on ghost guns. And if it's actually on the National Geographic Channel under traffic, it was incredible to see these ghost guns that are being manufactured. You can buy them, and their parts are shipped in the mail, and they're parts that aren't metal, that can't be picked up. So people are building ghost guns all the time, and I just wonder, going forward, it'll be just another part of the work that will have to be done with Peel Police, because I think that will be the next big one for us, because they're going to be so easy to obtain. Forget going to Texas, just fill out the order. You can buy these parts from here, these parts from here, and the next thing you know, we've got ghost guns in our community. And I really believe that's going to require an incredible amount of work from Peel Police going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. This next slide obviously highlights my comment earlier about the increase in carjackings, which is a shift in the way people have stealing vehicles. For the boards, to thank you to the board really for allowing us to expand our auto crimes team. We sadly have the highest rate per capita of auto theft. It's still plus or minus 20 a day. We have, I think Nick mentioned to me, we've seen a reduction perhaps at 11% as of this month. And this is September data, but carjackings still continue, as you know. The intimate partner violence discussion, I think Nick says it better. There's at least one woman strangled a day in Peel region. Last year, we laid 612 charges just on strangulation. The reason I highlight that is seen as a precursor, as an indicator for femicide. So if you can mitigate incidents early and disrupt the offenders early when you get indicators like strangulation, we're conceivably preventing a homicide at some point. So although we heard earlier there are some positive trends, and we can't claim ownership from the Safe Center response team and our family intimate partner violence unit at Davis Court and the one that we're going to have in Mississauga, but the region itself has declared this as a priority. The cities have done it too as an epidemic. We do agree, because in these homes, there's a young person, there's multiple young people that are exposed to everything that comes out of family and intimate partner violence that disrupts everything from them going to school, for them and their behaviors, the needs and demands and support from social service agencies. It is clearly a priority. The Safe Center response team is, again, one of its kind nationally. It's got a crisis worker that's oriented to family and intimate partner violence, paired up with a specially trained officer. They look more relaxed, but they're there to take the non-criminal disputes and try to off-ramp them. And it's one of our areas of priority. Again, our community crisis rapid response team has diverted, I think we're saying 3,000 hours now, I think it's on the slide, that would have been previously dispatched to a patrol officer. So the type of calls that do not require a full response, but they are a non-police response. It is an area that's a difficult one for us to press into, because there are times where you do need a uniform there. But we're thankful for our partners to be able to allow this to happen. It is a success thus far, and we do advocate for the funding for these teams to continue. It's moved on from a pilot to a permanent initiative. Our mobile crisis rapid response teams, we're still seeing too many cruisers parked outside of an emergency room. We are a strong advocate for this program from a funding standpoint to be expanded. We still only have 3 teams for a region as big as ours, when there are still 16 to 18 apprehensions happening a day. We know that if you have a crisis worker respond to a mental health incident, you have a greater likelihood for them not to end up in an emergency room. And as someone who's sat in an emergency room in the last couple of weeks with my mom, to have it bogged down with unnecessary emergencies that could be diverted to social service agencies or a clinical pathway right at the curbside prevents us from being there. It reduces our time getting stuck in an emergency room where we could be going to where we should be. Again, another advocacy point for the board and our region to continue to see funding not just come to us, but to our social service providers as well. One of the things that we had success with this year was our South Asian community engagement event. And, Vice Chair Coley, if you'd like to top up, and I know Deputy Chief DePat's not here, we know that we probably have not been serving our South Asian community, our identifiable ethnocultural groups the way we should be, in terms of shifting some of how we meet their needs. And we spent a long time getting their feedback. As a result, we have had a new template now developed that's transferable not just to the South Asian community, but can be to other communities. And Mayor Brown, I think you at our offsite in Niagara talked about how overwhelming the WhatsApp groups are. And they are probably more valuable than, and not trying to diminish our media partners, but anything online or print media, they're more influential in our ability to get correct information out or to provide updates to the community. So we now have 125 people we have identified as community ambassadors. They come to us, we come to them, and they are a vehicle for us to get more appropriate information out in the communities. and they span all sorts of different, they're not just South Asian, they're right across faith, cultural, and just business environments. And they have been a significant activity. I do want to acknowledge that Peel was a recipient of the single award out of nationally in Halifax by the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police for their autism strategy. Sadly, that was as a result of a negative interaction we had with an adult male who was on the spectrum, but it helped identify a gap. This is our testament to, hey, listen, we might not get it right all the time, but we'll use it as a platform to try to improve our service delivery, and acknowledgement to the community safety wellbeing team for doing that. And Project Lantern, of course, is another example of how in the space of priority populations, we are devoting our interests. Road safety probably can't be captured on one slide. But if we look at a day in the life of an officer and you look at their time spent on a pie chart, it'll be 90+% of the time is just screaming from call to call to call. If we could breathe back life into the span of an officer so that they would do traffic enforcement, can I tell you, we would probably put a dent in some of the road safety issues that we're seeing here in Peel, but we can't. So we do rely on both municipalities, speed enforcement, traffic calming initiatives. They all help me. It's like a force multiplier for me to help reduce it. But the number one complaint is like, where are our officers as it pertains to traffic related issues, whether it be street racing. Yesterday morning, in the morning, we had a street racing incident. And I do believe that, Marty, that I can't speak to it yet because it's subject to the Special Investigations Unit. But we know there was a street racing incident, literally 2 cars with a flagman ready to scream down a road that required our response. Sadly, somebody was critically injured, the bystander in it. But that happens daily, and people call it in. So our efforts continue to be devoted to this area. We know it's a priority, not just in like our commercial plazas. Mayor Parrish, we've put a little bit of dent in Westwood, but it keeps shifting to Ridgeway, to Trinity Commons, and now we're more aware of another one that's emerging, and it's a GTA-wide issue. But our enforcement is high. The stunt driving offenses are high. Overall offenses are increasing. And the stat is actually about our ability to enforce it. It's not about how many incidents are actually happening in the community. So it's sort of a responsive piece of data that we're showing you. We did hear from our Homicide Bureau, but I can tell you on a daily basis, Deputy Andrews texts me maybe 3 or 4 times a day with people being injured. And sadly, they're just young people on their way to school or work. Part of the updates I get are the vehicle remained on scene. Is it a sad state of affairs that I have to be told that somebody stayed at an accident? To me, it baffles me. And what more do you want for your community? You want them to just go places. I think of my kids, to be able to go places and not be fearful of being involved in a serious motor vehicle collision. But it is a legitimate issue. There is a significant role for us to be present, to be seen, to turn down this pressure. And it's one that will continue to be exacerbated with the growth of our region and the volume of vehicles. I do, I do not want to be the doom and gloom guy, but it's not a but. And we do feel it's our responsibility in Peel to be leaders in advocacy on the issues that are causing problems in our community. We will not take it sitting down, and we're thankful for your support from our board and councils to be able to advocate for these issues. I can tell you, auto theft wise, we have put enough attention on prevention, the auto manufacturers, the industry, legislative reforms, the pressure we're still seeing on our ports, which is not changing as fast as we want it to. But the reductions in auto theft, it's too early to put your hand up and say it's a victory. We don't believe it's statistically significant yet, but we have seen some changes. Gender-based violence, I spoke to, bail reform, and just even the fact that the Ontario Police College has added a 4th class to meet the needs of this province, and maybe even beyond that, inclusive of building out the college, is an increase. So, yeah, you know what? I'm not a politician, but I do believe my role, and then, although I'm the furthest in this organization from being a real cop, I do have a role to come alongside of you to make sure, we hit the right levers at the right time to make sure that our people can get to the calls they're supposed to be. The board knows very well, and we've spoken to this before, the new Comprehensive Police Services Act came into effect. And as a result, there are requirements for every police service in Ontario to make some adjustments. They do have budgetary impacts on us. Some of them are equipment related, and the equipment is, all entrenched in standards that are required for every Ontario police service. But the training implications, if you're a 30-person police department or 100-person police department, it's one thing. To be as big as we are, the training implications are absolutely necessary, but they require officers to come off the road, and they're the right thing to do. We do discretionary training, the human rights training that we're doing, everything we're doing for de-escalation has a positive impact on our people, but it is one more thing in the day in the life of an officer here. Maybe, Anthony, can you speak to the far right of the screen as it pertains to the background checks? The board has been privy to this before.
Thank you. The board is well aware that if a member of the community comes in and a job is pending and requires, or even on a voluntary basis, requires a police check, currently, until yesterday, the wait was close to 6 to 8 weeks and jeopardizing many job applicants, volunteer positions that obviously benefit the community. Part of the legislation which governs that is around the security guard provisions and private investigations provisions, which were at one time the responsibility of the province of Ontario in terms of the records checks. That is one example that has been downloaded to Peel Regional Police, our Records Bureau, and that's an addition of close to 7,500 additional checks. And so, and that is one that is heavily resource intensive because of the validation required to provide that check. And so it does impact our civilian bureau, especially in our records management services. That's one pressure. And just on a note for that, I see Staff Super Dirk Niles in the attendance here. We've updated our website, given a strategic initiative in there, down to about 4 to 5 weeks. But that is about as best as we're going to be able to ever do with the human resources. And as well, you heard today from our Homicide Bureau relating to the collection of digital evidence management. Digital evidence is essentially what goes to court now these days to be able to form what's called a Crown brief and prosecute an offender for that crime. There are federal and provincial legislative mandates for the time that is required from the time of arrest to the time that that court package is to be submitted, or else that court case is subject to being thrown out. We are now seeing that timeline decreased without consultation from police and an explosion, a tsunami of data coming into our digital evidence management unit. We're unable to meet those timelines, which the downstream impacts are court cases. And these are the very court cases of which we're advocating to be able to prosecute thefts, impaired driving, being thrown out for timeline violations. So these are some of the pressures out of control from PRP that impact operations directly.
Thank you, Anthony. As we shift the presentation, I do want to, and the board would be well aware, is that compounding the change in the nature of crimes and demands, social disorder, but just the population growth rate, we are seeing an increase in our response time. So I think this deserves a little bit of an explanation. The board has been very supportive of us in our ability to deal with last year's pressure. Mayor Brown, you know well, the 911 delays. Anthony, you say it pretty good about the calls versus people getting there.
So we told you earlier about 911 wait times. That is when someone dials 911 and has to wait for a person on the other end of the line to answer the phone. We've done a good job when dedicated resourcing is provided. We've done a good job from getting that from 90 seconds to 3 minutes down to about 10 to 13 seconds, depending on time of year. So that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about now is actually from the time a communicator or call taker takes the call to when an officer arrives on scene to deal with that situation. We have priority level of calls, which, to me, honestly, I don't like using because people want to see police, and to prioritize what is more important from one thing to another is certainly difficult. But we have a priority set of calls where in priority 1 calls, which means immediate loss of life or injury and some other variables, we are responding to. Priority 2 calls also indicate a sense of urgency and could be something like an offender is still on scene. There is immediate danger to life or injury, and you can see those calls starting to spike. If you go to the next slide, I'll try to wrap this up into what this means. When we hit to priority 3 and priority 4 calls, they are the calls which usually indicate that there's no offender on scene, there's no immediate danger to life or potential injury. But what you see is a significant increase in the time it takes our officers to get to those calls. I'm going to provide you just 2 brief examples of that. A priority 3 call could be a loss prevention officer who has arrested someone for theft and has called police to execute the charter duties of being able to read their rights, provide them a court date to go to court, and we will not get there for hours. Besides the charter impact and downstream impacts of this case getting thrown out, essentially it means that someone who is stealing, which is a massive impact, we see it at the LCBO all the time, you see it at your local Walmart, we get these calls all the time, day in and day out. They're just not being attended to. A priority 4 call, sadly, could be, and we have this quite often, break and enter to someone's home where a family with children will come home after their home is entered, deeply impacted by the violation into their personal space, but the suspect is not on scene, they're not in any danger, and can I tell you, it could be a day or 2 before an officer gets there. And not being able to enter their home or not wanting to enter their home in that vulnerable state is a massive impact to our community, and this is what we hear of. So call wait times, yes, we're answering the calls. We have no one to go to the calls.
Thank you, Anthony. And I know all of you are subject to dissatisfaction phone calls where I called, we weren't there. And for example, priority 4 are the theft of vehicles. So when your car is stolen, you wake up and it's gone, it falls in that priority 4 category. And I think Anthony's being generous. We do have cases where it can take us up to a week to get to people. And I think, Anthony, you would, if you had time, you could break, there are priority 5 to 9 calls also, which exist, which if you can imagine, you know, some people even call us back and say, don't bother. And from a quality of service to not just each of us in this room, but the community, we clearly know that it deserves to be improved. So the population growth rate, you know, this is the official data from 2019, is over 8% to 2034. But Cherry and Nika, you probably have this nailed better than anybody to explain 100,000 a year over 5 years, Halifax, and then by 2051, Montreal, Vancouver. So the rate of growth is not new to us. It's almost a redundant slide. It's basically for those listening online to just reiterate that the fastest growth rate in Canada is intended to be happening here. This slide, I think, for all of us in this room is not new. So we know this is the census data, right? It's not even the official data. I think if we got the official data, probably for all the municipalities, but if you focus on us, we'd be way lower than 140 officers per 100,000. And we just illustrated the rate of growth just since I've been here has been 7% in Peel officially, but the rate of growth, the organization is, 3.7. That is better than the rate previous to 2019, and we're very appreciative of that. But the municipalities listed here are ones that experience the same urban pressures that we do from a crime severity index, urban pressures, as well as, yes, we do have the airport there, but we do have pressures that come from our neighboring municipalities. To drive around the GTHA and to have 15 million people all within 45 minutes driving time means that the complexity of crimes here are different than Calgary, which, you drive 45 minutes out there and you could be petting an elk. I'm not diminishing the impact in Calgary, so I'm going to get an email from the Calgary chief for sure. But my issues are different than other municipalities, and it's almost an illustration. But I do want to go on the record again to say this is not my favorite slide because it doesn't tell you exactly how you're utilizing your officers, which we spend a lot of time for the first 45 minutes telling you what we're trying to do different here. I do think it's worth, to the board's awareness, we've got discussions on, niche, it was 8% one year and that was 15% the next year. It's an illustration of saying, since I've been here, and our team has been very diligent about looking at where can we reprioritize our existing resources. And you can see in 2021, I arrived in basically the start of 2020. And after evaluating for a period of time, we reallocated a significant amount of officers to the needs that are, it's not just back to the front line, but also to these areas that we are thinking are upstream. Our family intimate partner violence unit, community safety well-being, divisional mobilization officers, road safety teams. And then next year we trimmed some more, but we've got right down to the bone. And if you equate that to the budget asks plus the growth, you can see a correlation to why, I've come to you as a board with, you know, its boots on the grounds. And I did want to spend just a quick slide, and I think both councils have seen this, is, you know, we're hopeful to land shortly, Anthony, our South Division, if we can lock that in, just down to like where on the piece of property does the division take its home. It's basically down to easements, right? And not trying to divulge too much, but we do believe that'll be absolutely powerful for us in Mississauga. It is impossible for us to get east, west, north, south in a quick time frame. But 23 Division also is going to allow us to do that. We do have the largest one of the largest 911 call centers in Canada, because we do take all the phone calls for our 3 fire services and paramedics. Our new operational support facility, which is being constructed, we'd love to have the board out to see that. Is there? I just want to note that each police division is intended to be built out for the next 30 to 50 years. So, you know, at full capacity, could have 600 officers being deployed from each. As we present the budget to you, our thoughts aren't just to catch up to where we should be. And as I said to Regional Council last year, is, you know, all the data shows 600 just to breathe even, let alone keep up with growth. You can see the infrastructure needs are there for us as we move forward. And of course, are no doubt a pressure to both municipalities and the board. But there are some infrastructure changes happening to 21, 22 to make sure that they are, you know, as I said, when I came in 2019 in December, there were snowflakes coming through the windows into the Records Bureau, which if you try to have a shower there, there's no hot water. Like, it is really, it looks like a joke. It's like, I'm dating myself, but an episode of Hill Street Blues in one of them. But listen, we've got a plan. It's coming through, the capital budget speaking to it, and we're in a good spot for moving forward. Of course, there's other initiatives also in as it pertains to our work. So I'm going to just have Lauren. Lauren's been patiently waiting to correct me or to top up, speak to the next slide.
Sure, thanks, Chief. So now turning to how these pressures translate into our financial budgetary ask, we thought we'd just take a minute and I'll just overview how our operational budget breaks down. And it's really into 3 parts. And first and foremost, as a reminder, on average, 93% of our budget exists to fund our most valuable asset, which is our people. It is the salaries, the compensation for them to come in every day and do the work that they do, and the benefits that ensure they're supported to stay healthy and well to come to work every day. That leaves 2 other components, one of which is our reserve contributions. And our reserve contributions are an absolute foundational necessity for us to continue to contribute to support the medium and long-term continuity and sustainability of our operation. That translates very practically into several things, which include the purchase of vehicles to travel to calls, the buildings that our people work in and maintaining the state of good repair of those buildings, the technology needed to do their jobs and enhance accountability, and equipment, of course, to keep them safe. One other part on our reserves is over the last 5 years, we have generally contributed what we've spent, always with a laser focus on our in-year asks for reserve contributions to be responsible in the management of those balances, mindful of how they impact our overall operating budget. The last component, on average, is about 2% of our operating budget, and that's what's left. That's the keep the lights on component of our operation. It translates to things like keeping our buildings secure and clean, keeping our frontline emergency vehicles fueled, keeping our members outfitted and equipped. It's their shirts, it's their jackets, it's their pants, it's their boots, and of course, maintaining our software and our buildings on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. Slide, Chief. When we get to our requirements and asks for the 2025 operational budget, you've just heard the chief and my colleagues, speak to pressures, and this ask certainly in part reflects a response in our need to address those pressures that are faced within our community. And you've heard about how we need to continue to catch up to staffing levels that we did not historically, certainly over the last 5-10 years, keep pace with the growth and exponential growth of our region. I also want to make mention before I break down what you see in front of you on the slide that what this ask also reflects is that it is one part within a multi-year plan invested in the sustainable growth of our service to continue to deliver on adequate and effective policing in our region. Through this plan, what it really practically means is we want to shift the dial and the story that we're in front of you telling, which is shifting it from one of building back and catching up to one that is exclusively in the future focused on future-proofing our service and continuing to grow it in a sustainable way that is concurrent to the exponential growth of the region and the evolving and increasingly complex pressures that we face from a criminal and vulnerable perspective. Practically how that breaks down is into 3 components. So the base budget is really the requirements, the minimum requirements required for 2025 without any further investment in staffing. It reflects things like cost of living, inflation, and as I mentioned previously, what's required to continue to contribute to our reserves. What we are asking for to address the challenges faced, and again, as part of our multi-year plan to grow back our service and plan to embed resiliency in the future, is for 300 net new officers and 55 civilian professionals, in addition to 10 communicators that will directly correlate to the challenges you heard the chief overview and the legislative pressures and requirements that we must comply to. Overall, what this means is our new staffing will total 10.6% increase over the budget last year, a 10.7% impact from a base budget perspective, and overall this reflects a $131.7 million increase or 21.3% increase over our 2024 operating budget. And lastly, a key component of our ability to sustain our operations, which is exactly what this is our capital budget. The total for our budget this year is $155.7 million, which is broken down and reflective of the categories you see before you. It's the continued contribution to our land and facilities, which include sustainable modifications to 21 Division next year, the purchase and acquisition of our new South Division that will allow us to more efficiently and effectively deploy our officers to meet the needs of our communities in the south of our region. It also includes continued investment in information technology, whether that be digital evidence management, next-gen 911, the maintenance of our radio infrastructure, our VCOM, cybersecurity, and general infrastructure and placement in things like laptops and servers. Of course, there's also equipment in our new officers and the requirements, as the chief mentioned, to meet the growing requirements as legislated by us under the CSPA, vehicles to address the growth of our 300 new officers, and continued investment in our communications technology. We'd also be remiss not to, of course, call out the contributions from capital to the airport division, which are for things like equipment and vehicles that support the deployment of our officers at the airport. However, it is cost recoverable, but we always like to capture it here from a view of transparency.
Thank you, Lauren. And so with that, I do want to thank the board for their indulgence. I know the material has been circulated with the board previously. Mr. Bowden, thank you for your attention. And I would just turn it back to you, Chair, to conclude the presentation.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. Questions? Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Chair Unica. And I know it's been a lengthy presentation, and we've had the chance to ask questions in Brampton at Finance Committee, so this is my 3rd occasion, but there were some issues I wanted to put on the record just out of concern and to make sure that we have your response and mindful is how we meet the challenge of public safety in our community. When I go around Peel Region in Brampton, frankly anywhere in the GTA, the #1 issue I hear about is public safety. And so this budget is particularly important. The slide I point out every year is the one on the per capita. I know the slide you said you didn't like. I got to go back to that. And I remember when we had the retreat as a police board asking you all the tough questions. That slide scares me in the sense that we know there's a huge underreported population in Peel. So the numbers are much, much uglier. And organized crime doesn't care if they're operating in Etobicoke or Malton or Brampton. Organized crime is sophisticated. So we're 600 short of Toronto on a per capita basis. You're not asking us for 600 to catch up to Toronto. By the way, I've heard the Toronto Police Union say that their numbers are inadequate. And if their numbers are inadequate, and we're not even at their numbers, I know this answer, but I want you to put on the record, how come we can't do 600 if that's what we need to meet the per capita numbers that we have in adjacent municipalities? I know there's a limit what the college can permit. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. So we're sort of paying for the sins of our past, I guess. We need 600 now. And it's practically impossible to onboard that many, let alone have them via the province be trained at the Ontario Police College. It's we've been appreciative of the flexibility and the lobbying of the board and the province to allow us to gain more seats. The reality is if you were to ask me, you know, like I'm not a educator, I'm not a health professional. I've got a very, laser focused responsibility here is to be able to tell you the public safety needs. And, I think to reiterate probably the way Nick said it earlier is there's a crisis occurring and on the horizon. It's not even on the horizon right now. Just the quality of service and the needs of the public are not being met here. And it's a standard of what's acceptable to us. For me to tell you, to the board, what are you willing to accept? If you were to ask me, plain and simple, is it adequate and effective? No. It's adequate and effective. It is the two elements to it. And so I can keep doing things in my space to work it to a way that doesn't look like any other municipality. I'm not saying we need to be like anybody else, Mayor Brown. We don't. We're doing our own thing here. But I do believe that we're not at the spot we need to be. As it pertains to Toronto, I can't speak for Toronto. I know, they say they're 1,000 short. So there's unofficial numbers, their numbers. They have their own unique demands, and I do not like to compare myself to anywhere else. All I can do is say to you here at Peel, it's now down to, listen, if you give me the officers we're asking for, I will show you a better delivery of service to the community. It's not going to happen just overnight, not going to happen in 1 year, but I hate for this region to be 5 years from now looking back and saying they didn't do enough back in, what year, you pick a year. And I'm not doing it for the legacy piece. It's just, you think your phone blows up with where we're falling short? It's this constantly, the community deserves better.
Yeah, and I believe we give you the resources, you get it fixed. We saw that with 911 last year, massive win. But you're handicapped right now. I did think be blunt. It's sort of on a penalty kill if you're going to look at a hockey analogy where there's more officers able to respond in adjacent municipalities to the same incident than there is in Peel. And so I think we're doing the bare minimum. As much as it sounds like an intimidating number, we're doing the bare minimum in terms of keeping our head above water, given some of the historical underfunding of frontline officers in Peel. And so what I want to have on the record is what falls off the table. So we're eyes wide open on that. CBC just put out an article today Talia Ricci, on intimate partner violence, and they zeroed in on Peel. Increased Safe Center Peel, 270% increase year over year for walk-ins facing domestic violence. When I started around this table, there was 9,000 IPV calls a year. I think we're closer to 17, 18,000 a year. And then I've heard feedback, and Chief may not like to hear this, but I've heard feedback from frontline officers who tell me that there are not officers able to respond to IPV calls, not once in a blue moon, but on a daily basis. If someone's pleading for help, we have to, for adequate, effective police, we have to have an officer able to respond. And so knowing that you're already handicapped, what are you going to do with this budget to make sure that that those key calls don't fall off the table? Is there a way to stitch this ship together to make sure that those calls, that critical calls, don't fall off the table? That's my biggest worry. I know it's a number that makes people nervous, but if we have a historic problem in Peel that needs to be fixed, my worry is that I don't want it to get worse. I don't know where we're failing, that the call volumes for domestic violence continue to skyrocket. But in terms of your responsibility to make sure that that person pleading for help isn't going to have to wait a day when their life could be in danger. How can you assure us of that an issue that our region of Peel has declared a gender-based violence epidemic? How can you assure us that we're not dropping the ball on that?
So I think the reality is that it is a juggling act, right? I'd hate to tell you this, but we're going to pick and choose our priorities right now. We don't have the luxury of meeting all the needs. So to your specific question as it pertains to intimate partner violence and things that we identify as our priorities, they will continue to be ones. And you probably have, we've tried to demonstrate in the last 4 years, 3 years, how we've shifted resourcing to meet those needs. We've, seen a drop in femicides. Our ability to have a safe center in Mississauga is going to be amazing. We know that there are survivors and victims of intimate partner violence that just can't make it up to Brampton to walk in and ask for support, either from a settlement service or legal so I can tell you that our priority 1s and 2s, you will see a change in our ability to get there. The 3s and 4s, we're going to have to continue to navigate. I bet you will see a change in those as well. It's just, I wish I could predict to you what the implications of population growth look on an exact nature. These are things we don't know, but I'm not even giving you the growth plan. I'm just giving you the can we get back to breaking even plan. But I can tell you this: you've got our assurance as a team. Things that are important to you, to our community, the ones that have the greatest area of harm, will get our priority first. And some things might suffer, like my window got broken and I haven't seen a cop in days, or I have a neighbor dispute that's not being mitigated. Those things may suffer, but we're on the road to resolving that. I said to you earlier that, not like there's nobody in this room. There's probably, I don't know, maybe somebody in this room as a citizen called in a shooting or a homicide. But can I tell you, many of you have had a fraud, a theft, a neighbor dispute, maybe a racial slur thrown at you that requires, there's so many things that end up at the bottom of our list that are quality of life issues. We have been to 25% more mental health calls in the last 4 years. Just in a year and a half, we've had 10,700 calls to individuals that are homeless, that involve them. Sometimes it's conflated with crime, sometimes it's not. 1,800 opioid overdoses in a year and a half. There are non-criminal activities that are also time and demand for us. So they're all kind of conflated in between, can we get to your verbal intimate partner dispute? So that's for us. We're not absconding from that. We're not putting the responsibility on you as a board or the community to navigate that, but we've got enough discernment to know with the appropriate resources, we'll be able to respond to the pressures that are the most highest priority in a better way. Just need the resources.
Yeah, last comment, Chair Nika, I know I've expressed a level of nervousness, but I know we have the right chief at the right moment of time in Peel to address some of these challenges we have. And just to say, proud to support this budget as tough as it is. But the debt of gratitude we have for all of you. If you're a police officer in Sudbury or Barrie or Niagara Falls, it's a very different dynamic. You don't have 3 calls coming at the same time where you want to respond to all 3. We lost 7 officers last year in Canada. And so I know you've got a great responsibility to take care of them, to keep us safe. And I think this keeps us our head above water, but I know how much work you have to do and continue to think outside the box, because this is the #1 issue I hear about.
Thank you. Mayor Parrish.
Well, I was holding my breath the whole time Mayor Brown was speaking, waiting for him to move a motion to go with 600 this year, which would have taken the increase to 263.4 million, which Mississauga pays 62% of. I also want to thank Rob Serpave. He answers all my questions, and there are a lot of them because I'm a brand new mayor. And I'm a real old politician, but a brand new mayor. And the crime rates, despite the difference or the similarity of the 2 cities, are pretty much similar. When you look at the numbers of calls and the categories of calls, they shift a bit, but they're pretty similar. One of the things I have asked, and I continue to listen carefully to, I love when Anthony speaks, because I can remember my dad as an officer walking the beat, and they didn't even have cell phones. He had a billy club and a gun, and he managed. They managed. You've got all that technology now, so the comparison is still not clear to me. If you look at Calgary and you look at some of the other bars there that have higher police officers, they may not have an Anthony, and they may not have the technology that we've got. So that one is always in the back of my mind. And I remember my dad, and he was very tall, and the ruffians he'd have to keep them arm's length from him, and they could always kick his shins. So he had no hair growing on his legs at all from the knees down. But I mean, that was a different time and a different place. And also, I have no choice but to support this, but I'm going to have a hard sell, as you saw on Wednesday with the rest of the councillors. And I'm really happy Rob explained to the councillors there's nothing whatsoever they can do about it. And so there's no point in arguing. There's no point in saying, well, we can't support this. It's going through. I am happy that Patrick restrained himself and didn't push for 600. That would have distressed me more than I could imagine. But it also tells me next year the budget's going to be just as bad. And it's been a long time that you've needed officers. You seem to be catching up fairly quickly, which is a concern of mine too, because some of us have to get reelected. The other thing I wanted to ask you, because I've asked a few times over a few years, is there ever a chance through the airport contingent and Malton's isolation of at least putting a small station, a functioning station with a platoon of 30 or 40 officers in it to take those 2 areas of jurisdiction?
So, Mayor Parrish, since I got here, remember when I arrived, we're just on the heels of the shooting, and still probably one of the largest volume of rounds fired at a single shooting in Malton. We don't want to dwell on the past, but our discussions about what are the needs of Malton, it is without a doubt underserved, and in terms of our ability to be present there. So Mark, I'm just going to draw you into this. Mark Andrews, we do believe, or maybe it's Anthony or Mark, I don't know which one of you can speak to it. Without a doubt, if we can find a place to deploy officers from in Malton, I can guarantee you the footprint and the presence, just the presence and ability to be there would exponentially grow. So it's an active activity right now, but maybe you want to.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Last night was a perfect example. You had a whole pile of police cars there. You have convinced Westwood Square to put in the gates and some of the other measures that you've provided, and it was peace in the valley last night. You've done a terrific job. I'm not complaining about the job you're doing there. I'm also saying since that shooting with Jonathan Davis, we've built a youth hub there. And your officers have been in it and they're very impressed with it. And we're stopping the crime before it gets started. And I think that has to be done too. We're building another one in Mississauga. But at some point, that airport contingent and maybe a piece of Malta needs to have a place where people know it's always going to be there and it's going to be easy to get cruisers out.
Agreed. And I just want to highlight that I think it's the chair that said that you're doing community safety well-being before it was community safety well-being. I think the advocacy for that hub is 100%. I remember walking through that community after the shooting. People weren't sending their kids out to just play basketball in the community. And, you know, I know President Woolley, he was a footbeat youth officer, or maybe not youth officer, right? Yeah, so he knew that firsthand, and he saw some of these kids not even leaving their apartment at night or in the afternoons. So, but that being said, yes, the population and exploring the options either from the airport division or actually finding a facility there is an immediate priority for us. So Mark, maybe it's Mark or Anthony.
Thank you, Chief. To answer the mayor's question, we're looking at a long-term solution, working with the GTAA. We actually have a top-to-top meeting set up in December to meet with the leadership of the GTAA on what a new dual-purpose facility would look like. But that's a longer-term plan. In the interim, we're looking at a way to deploy from our current existing facility into Malton that we share with the airport. So it won't have as big a footprint as we'd like, but it's a starting point.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And as far as working with youth, I'd love to get the statistics on shoplifting and petty crime and see if there's been a change since the youth hub opened. We feed 300 kids a day there who come to school with no breakfast, no lunch. And the city's footing that bill. I'm still looking for the province to help us with that. And had Minister Tabolo's right-hand lady out on Monday going through it, and she was really impressed. But I'd love to know if you keep stats like that, if we could use those stats to get some more money out of the province.
Agreed. And Mayor, you asked us, I think probably earlier in the year about that. And so between Anthony and I know Mark DePat's not here, but the team is compiling those trends to see. And I think we are actually seeing it as a reduction in those social impact factors, whether the petty complaints or crimes or social disorders.
And I don't want you to misinterpret my concern about the increase this year as criticism. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Before I move on, Madam Mayor, if you'll allow me, I think you were a little unfair to yourself. Just in the speaking straight off the, when you said you're concerned about votes in election, you've never been that person. I don't think that's what you've meant to say. I think what you've always said, you're concerned about sending such a hefty tax bill to your taxpayers in Mississauga, knowing that these are tough times. That's certainly what you've conveyed to me. You've never been a vote counter. So I think you sold yourself out, and I think you misspoke. I want to correct that record. Moving on to Mr. Khan, please.
Thank you, Chair. With this being my first budget as a board member, I dedicated considerable time thoroughly immersing myself into the data, the projections, the objectives underpinning this budget. One of the advantages to my joining the board more recently is that I've had the opportunity to complete my mandated training of the Community Safety and Policing Act. The training reinforced my understanding of our shared responsibilities under the CSPA. particularly regarding our duty to ensure adequate and effective policing for the community. The mandate is fundamental to our work, and I'm fully committed to upholding it. This 2025 budget represents a clear, structured response to the increasingly complex public safety needs across the Peel region. It's evident that this budget is crafted to ensure our police service is equipped with the tools, resources, and support necessary to address the rise in calls for service and to serve our growing diverse population. I believe the budget strikes an essential balance. It meets our fiscal responsibilities and legal obligations while building community trust and delivering responsive, effective policing our residents expect. Supporting the budget fulfills our duty under CSPA and underscores our commitment to advancing public safety, reducing crime, ensuring community where everyone feels safe and secure. In closing, I support this budget not only because it aligns with our legal mandate, but because it reflects a strategic commitment to our community's safety and well-being. I look forward to working with all of you, alongside all of you, to ensure the Peel Regional Police, the Police Services Board move forward in a way that reinforces both public safety and community trust. As well, on a personal note, I want to thank Deputy Milinovich for my tour of 180 Dairy Road yesterday, and as well the presentations today. I got to actually tour the Homicide Bureau there yesterday, and the presentation today was enlightening as well. And for the presentation on Project Lantern, have been a caregiver for a loved one with dementia. It was quite poignant for me today. And also thank you to Mr. Boughton and everybody for their budget presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, that is my list. I now would accept a motion from Mr. Boughton, seconded by Mr. Carby, that we move receipt of this report of our budget and that it be moved to Regional Council for adoption. All those in favor? No one opposed? That is carried. Thank you all. Okay, with that, we've just got a couple of more housekeeping type items, I believe, and then we've got to get to the in-camera. But the only other item of new business on our public agenda is the Microsoft AESCE Agreement Purchase Order Increase, report dated September 20, 2024 from Deputy Chief Eduardi, Innovation and Technology Command, providing the board with the request to extend the contract with Dell Canada for the supply of the Microsoft Enterprise license. And that is the recommendation that we have before us. Do I have any speakers to that motion? Deputy Eduardi, did you want to speak to it briefly?
Sure, I'll just be very brief. This is not an ask for money. It's an ask to increase the procurement value that was established a few years ago by competitive process. The funds are budgeted, and this is essentially to secure our computing environment for everything in Microsoft and all the work that we're doing on that digital frame. Thank you.
If I have no questions, will someone move the report? I have Samita and Al Boughton. Anybody opposed? That is carried. With that, I have the adjournment of our public session. And I'm going to ask everybody to make, because I think we will go right into camera. I'm not going to give you a quick break because I think you'll be getting a quick break shortly thereafter. So thank you to all. And I would ask that the meeting is formally adjourned. That motion is carried. We are now moving in camera immediately.